Chapter 73. Night talk. After such a commotion, the few people who were still unfamiliar with each other became closer in an instant. They became much more intimate with each other. "Alright, we've played and messed around. It's time to get down to business," Ouyang Qingtian said. Hearing this, everyone's expressions became more serious. Everyone should know that there are strict inspections when entering and exiting the city. This is why I didn't let you leave earlier. It's all the same. Ouyang Qingtian looked at the three of them and said, "The slave-conquering army set out a month ago. The army that is closest to the city of Sin is less than 50 miles away from us. Don't look at the distance. Every time there is a slave-conquering army, there will always be escaped slaves. Therefore, almost all the roads to St. Riuin are guarded by soldiers from the kingdom. Leaving the city through the normal roads is very dangerous, but you are very lucky." Speaking up to here, Ouyang Qingtian paused and smiled. "In the area where you usually train, I found an ancient cave that leads to the other side of the city of Sin. You can leave from there." "An ancient cave that leads to the outside of the city?" Ouyang Shi froze. Xiao Yun and the others didn't understand either. This was discovered by the mayor not long ago. The dual-pupil wolf entered the city of Sin from there, Qin Feng said and looked at Ouyang Qingtian. The latter's eyes flashed with surprise. He had been recovering for the past few days, but he could still analyze the situation so clearly. "How did you know?" Ouyang Shi asked. Qin Feng smiled and said, "I suspected it when we were attacked that night. I don't believe that the mayor would be so careless as to leave a late-stage, second-level spiritual beast there. But at that time, it was only a suspicion. It wasn't until the dual-pupil wolf appeared that I was sure it wasn't a spiritual beast from there. It came from the outside. At that time, I wasn't sure where the dual-pupil wolf came from. But after hearing what the mayor said, I connected the dots." Ouyang Qingtian smiled and nodded. He couldn't hide the admiration in his eyes. "Little Shi, although you are very smart in your career, when it comes to calmness and analysis, you are far from Qin Feng's. To be able to make the most correct choice in that situation, to let you break through, and to be able to guess what was wrong, that's not something an ordinary person can do." Ouyang Qingtian patted Qin Feng's shoulder and said with a smile, "With you here, at least I don't have to worry about you losing your lives because of recklessness." Ouyang Shi pursed her lips, but she had to admit that she had panicked that night. If it wasn't for Qin Feng's calm analysis and strategy, they would have been finished. Xiao Yun and the other two also had expressions of admiration. Qin Feng's strength and intelligence were superior to theirs. They were not narrow-minded people, and would not be jealous of others just because they were outstanding. The situation of getting out of the city has been solved, but I want to say that the real danger is still outside. When that time comes, not only will you have to face the harsh environment outside, you will also have to avoid being hunted down by the army and other organizations. There will also be people from the city of Sin who will come after you. At that time, you won't have any protection or resources. You will have to rely on yourselves. You will have to do everything you can to get into the St. Riuin." Ouyang Qingtian looked at the five of them and said seriously, "I will ask you one last time. Does anyone want to leave? Even if we stay, we will be taken away and become the lowest of slaves. We might as well go out and fight." Xiao Yun faintly smiled. "I don't know if this is the right choice, but I know that staying is definitely the wrong choice." Qin Feng shrugged and smiled. "So what I need to do is to avoid making the wrong choice." Ouyang Shi, Long Zhan and Su Qin all nodded. Under such circumstances, they had no choice but to leave. "Good, the city of Sin's hopes will be placed on you." Ouyang Qingtian smiled. His eyes were a little moist as he said, "You can all go back. This will be your last night in the city of Sin. Spend some time with your family. Tomorrow afternoon, gather here. I will send you out of the city at night." After returning home, Qin Feng's heart was heavy. He didn't know what to do. This was the place where he was born and raised. His heart was full of longing. But when it was time to leave, he didn't know what to say. In the end, he sighed and went to Qin Yao's room. Towards his arrival, Qin Yao didn't seem to be surprised. She poured him a cup of tea. "Sister, you have to take care of your body." Qin Yao paused. She filled the cup and handed it to Qin Feng. In a soft voice, she said, "Little Feng, the outside world is not the same as home. You have to think before you do anything." Qin Feng was startled and said in shock, "You know about it? The great conscription of slaves is about to begin. With your talent, you will definitely be conscripted. If that's the case, why don't you just escape from the city? I know that you already have this plan in mind." Qin Yao faintly smiled. Qin Feng understood. It seemed that Qin Yao didn't know about that secret. She was just analyzing the situation. But even so, to be able to analyze the general situation, Qin Feng admired Qin Yao's meticulousness. He didn't hide anything and said, "This is my only way out." "Yes." Qin Yao nodded. Looking at Qin Feng, there was a smile in her eyes, but also heartache. "At such a young age, you have to bear all this. It's all my fault for not being able to protect you." Qin Feng smiled and shook his head. "Sister, this is what I should do. Compared to living a mediocre life, you prefer the current me." Qin Yao was startled. Soon after, she shook her head with a bitter smile and sighed. "I don't know if it's good or bad to have such a smart brother who can read my mind at any time. I don't hide my thoughts in front of you." Qin Feng curled his lips. Qin Yao stroked Qin Feng's head and laughed softly. The two's words diluted the sadness of parting. After talking with Qin Yao, Qin Feng's mood improved a lot. He was no longer so depressed. Looking at the darkening sky, Qin Feng hesitated for a moment and then walked towards Qin Zhen's room. "Little Feng." Qin Feng's arrival in the middle of the night startled Qin Zhen. He quickly let him in. After entering the room, Lin Hui, Qin Feng's adoptive mother, poured a cup of tea and handed it to Qin Feng. "Little Feng, it's so late. Why are you looking for your parents? Is there something you need?" Taking the tea from Lin Hui, Qin Feng thanked her and sat down. Looking at Qin Feng's and Lin Hui's white hair, and the fact that he was about to leave as an escaped slave and bring shame to the family, Qin Feng's nose twitched. Seeing Qin Feng's strange behavior, or perhaps it was due to the connection between father and son, Qin Zhen felt that something was wrong. "Little Feng, is there something you want to talk to me about?" Qin Feng nodded and looked at Lin Hui. After hesitating for a long time, he said softly, "Father, I want to know about Mother." All these years, this was not only a knot in Qin Zhen's heart, it was also a knot in his heart. He never asked about his mother, but that didn't mean he didn't care. Chapter 74. Chapter 74. The Cursed Family. "Mother, I'm sorry." Qin Feng looked at Lin Hui and apologized. Lin Hui was Qin Yao's mother, not Qin Feng's. At most, she was his adoptive mother. Qin Feng knew that he didn't have a biological mother since he was a child. In addition, he often heard those gossips, so he was a bit of a loner. He was also cold towards Lin Hui because he believed that it was because of her that his mother could not enter the Qin family. However, no matter how Qin Feng treated her, Lin Hui would always take care of him with a smile on her face. She never once complained that he was the child of her love rival. It was because of Lin Hui's meticulous care that Qin Feng's attitude towards her gradually improved. Finally, he was willing to call her mother. If it weren't for the fact that he had to leave and didn't know if he could come back, Qin Feng would never have mentioned his birth mother. Lin Hui rubbed Qin Feng's head and smiled gently. "Brother Zhen, there are some things that I should tell Xiao Feng." Qin Zhen was stunned. His eyes dimmed. After a long silence, he let out a deep sigh. "Xiao Feng, do you really want to know about your mother?" Qin Feng nodded. Qin Zhen sighed again when he saw this, and his tone was filled with bitterness. He said, "You've grown up, And there are some things that you should know. But you know what? If you hadn't asked, I would never have asked. Is my mother's background really that bad? Don't listen to the outside world's nonsense. To Qin Feng's surprise, Qin Zhen actually showed a rare display of anger. That tone clearly revealed a trace of ruthlessness and anger. Who is my mother? Qin Feng asked. His intuition told him that his guess might be wrong. Her. Qin Zhen touched the jade pendant in front of his chest. His eyes, which had already been stained with wind and frost, actually revealed a deep sense of nostalgia. She is a fairy. Fairy! Qin Feng was startled. From Qin Zhen's tone, his mother's background was obviously very noble, but why was he unwilling to announce it to the public? Xiao Feng, it's not that I don't want to tell you who your biological mother is, but I don't dare to tell you, and I don't dare to let outsiders know about that experience. Knowing what Qin Feng was thinking, Qin Zhen sighed and said, Your mother doesn't belong here. She came from a terrifying place. Meeting her was the happiest memory of my life. Speaking up to here, Qin Zhen suddenly paused, revealing an awkward expression. Lin Hui sensibly walked away and did her own thing. After she left, Qin Zhen smiled bitterly and said, You still don't know about the world outside of this land, do you? Outside of the primitive land, there is an even more vast world called the Myriad Cloud World. I have been there before. At this moment, Qin Feng's pupils shrank. What? Qin Zhen once left this place? How is that possible? Why had he never heard of it before? Allow father to keep a secret. Touching Qin Feng's head, Qin Zhen's eyes were filled with pride as she said, Your mother is the most beautiful person in the world. To be able to meet and fall in love with her is the greatest honor of your father's life. Qin Feng was puzzled. If that was the case, why did he hide it from his birth mother? Understanding Qin Feng's thoughts, Qin Zhen said, That is a terrifying place. Because I am the descendant of a sinner, your mother's clansmen did not allow her to be with me and separated us. I could only leave with you and come back here. The reason why I hid it was because I didn't want you to look for her. After so many years, she should have her own family. Moreover, that place is too terrifying. I didn't want you to get involved. As for how I left, where it was, and how I came back, I can't tell you. Qin Zhen sighed and said earnestly, There are some things that can't be said. Qin Feng clenched his fists tightly and did not ask about his mother. Little Feng, you can go to St. Ryuin to cultivate, but remember, never leave this land. Suddenly, Qin Zhen stared at Qin Feng with shining eyes. Qin Feng was shocked. Listening to his father's tone, he seemed to know everything. And Qin Zhen's next words confirmed his thoughts. I know you are going to leave in a day or two. It is hard to say whether you will live or die, so you want to know about your mother. Don't leave yourself with any regret. Father, so you know everything, Qin Feng said. Qin Zhen sighed sadly. He would rather not know anything. But I don't understand. Why do you want to stop me from leaving here? Qin Feng said. If you want to get rid of the fate of being enslaved, you have to leave here and find the root of all this. Qin Zhen shook his head and said slowly, Little Feng, listen to me. Don't ask and don't go out. I am doing this for your own good. Qin Feng's hands clenched slightly. He narrowed his eyes and frowned, thinking about something. Things seemed to be out of his control. Qin Zhen's words were obviously hiding something. After a moment of silence, Qin Feng shook his head and said firmly, Father, what is the reason for you to stop me from going out? If you don't tell me, I won't ask. But since I have embarked on this path, this is my mission. After staring at Qin Feng for a long time, Qin Zhen sighed deeply and said slowly. At this moment, his voice suddenly became much heavier. Because our family is a family that has been cursed by the heavens. A family that has been cursed before. Qin Feng's narrowed eyes suddenly widened. His pupils abruptly shrank as he cried out in shock. Qin Zhen nodded and said, Everything I know is told to me by my father, your grandfather. Our Qin family is cursed. It is said that as long as the members of the Qin family leave the primitive land, misfortune will happen. No one can escape. If you want to live peacefully, you have to stay here. Glancing at the shocked Qin Feng, Qin Zhen sighed. His eyes became much sadder, his face was filled with loneliness, and his voice was somewhat hoarse. 10 years ago, your grandfather died because of the curse. 40 years ago, your grandfather didn't listen to your great-grandfather's advice and insisted on going out to make a living. In the end, at that time, your grandfather's strength had reached a very terrifying level. But at that time, misfortune happened. In one night, your grandfather was seriously injured by an unknown person and almost died. If it wasn't for his great strength, he would have died. But he was also left with unimaginable injuries. 10 years ago, his injuries relapsed and he finally died. Taking a sip of tea, Qin Zhen eased the emotions in his heart and continued, 20 years ago, I was as stubborn as your grandfather. Even if your grandfather took out his trump card to cut off the relationship with me, it couldn't stop my young and impetuous heart and disdain for the so-called curse of the family. In the end, under your grandfather's sad gaze, I resolutely embarked on a journey and went to a faraway place to start my own experience. Later, my strength advanced rapidly. 18 years ago, I met your mother, at the most glorious time of my life. When I sneered at the so-called curse, misfortune happened. I encountered something I should never have encountered. I was almost crippled by the people there, and almost died tragically. Later, I dragged my broken body and came back here sadly. Chapter 75. Li Qin Feng looked at him, shocked, speechless. What kind of secret had he heard? In the cage of the primitive world, as slaves, countless people wanted to leave, but no one had ever succeeded. And this obstacle that was like a natural moat did not seem to have any effect on the Qin family. Not only had Qin Zhen gone out, his grandfather had gone out as well. In fact, over the generations of the Qin family, many people had gone out. But how come no one knew about it? Not even the slightest bit of news. This was too inconceivable. Xiao Feng, I know your doubts. This is the Qin family's biggest secret. Only the patriarch knows, and it has been passed down from generation to generation. In my generation, I don't want to follow the teachings of the ancestors. I will bury this secret in my heart. As I said earlier, there are some things that can't be said. Slowly unclenching his fists, Qin Feng raised his head and looked at Qin Zhen. Father, have you ever regretted the decision you made? Qin Feng was stunned. He stared blankly at Qin Zhen. Some things you can only know if you regret it after you do it. Even if you regret it, it doesn't mean it's wrong. Qin Feng said softly, perhaps there really is some mysterious curse, but since it has happened to the Qin family, then as a member of the Qin family, we either have to accept the arrangement of fate and submit to the curse, or we have to go against the heavens and break the so-called curse. Perhaps it will be difficult, and it is not something that can be done overnight, nor can it be done in 1 or 2 generations. But as a member of the Qin family, we have an obligation to fight for the future generations. Perhaps you didn't believe it back then, or perhaps you wanted to break the curse and not let the Qin family be cursed, so you had to leave. Even our ancestors thought the same way. Looking at his son's determined eyes, Qin Zhen suddenly felt inexplicably absent-minded. Back then, he was just like him, with the same eyes, the same ambition, and the same unwillingness to admit defeat. A gratified smile gradually appeared on his face. He took off the jade pendant from his chest and put it on Qin Feng's body. He said, "This is the only thing your mother left for me. She once said that if one day you made a decision, you would be qualified to have it. You don't object?" Qin Feng was stunned. Your great-grandfather tried to stop your grandfather, and your grandfather tried to stop me. Right now, I am also trying to stop them. However, the result is still destined. Rather than this, I might as well let you out. But Xiao Feng, whether or not you can get out will depend on your own ability. In my generation, I've decided to sever the secrets of the Qin family and the way out." Qin Feng nodded and walked out. After Qin Feng left, the room gradually quieted down. Lin Hui walked over. "Little Hui, it's been hard on you." Qin Zhen slowly pulled Lin Hui into his arms and said softly. In an instant, Lin Hui's tears flowed out. Which woman would be willing to see her man miss another woman and raise the child of that woman and the man she loved the most? Qin Zhen gently stroked the woman in his arms. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, "Do you think Xiao Feng can succeed?" She gently nestled in Qin Zhen's arms and looked at his resolute face. She said softly, "You said that her son couldn't be an ordinary person without any achievements." Qin Zhen's body trembled. He murmured, "Yes, her child is destined to be extraordinary. To be honest, sometimes I really hope Xiao Feng can always be an ordinary person and live happily for the rest of his life." Lin Hui nestled in Qin Zhen's arms and said. Qin Zhen put his hand into Lin Hui's beautiful hair and felt the softness of her hair. He slowly said, "In this enslaved land, there are many things that he can't choose. And that's not the path he wants to take. If he was just a child of an ordinary family, he might be able to live an ordinary life. But he's not. He's my son. He's not destined to be an ordinary person. He has responsibilities on his shoulders. Some responsibilities are necessary for a man. Running away from them is not the way out. And do you think that being an ordinary person is what he wants? Will he really be happy? He won't. That will only make him more miserable. Only by constantly moving forward and climbing the peak can a man of the Qin family pursue. The so-called curse will be broken sooner or later." Hearing Qin Zhen's words, Lin Hui said helplessly, "I know all this. I just feel sorry for him. He's still young. These things shouldn't implicate him. He's just a child. He'll grow up sooner or later. Some things can't be avoided just because you want to. Since he was sent to the Qin family, some things were already predestined. If we deliberately change the trajectory of his life, he'll hate us when he finds out. Let's wait for him to decide everything in the future." Qin Zhen clenched his fingers and said in a deep voice, "Sigh." After a long sigh, Lin Hui looked at Qin Zhen's face that was no longer young but still charming. Suddenly she said, "Do you think something really happened there? All these years, she hasn't." Qin Zhen looked out the window calmly. His face was a little worried. He said helplessly, "I don't know. It shouldn't be. After all, who dares to? Maybe one day, Xiao Feng will solve all this." "But the situation here," Lin Hui said worriedly. "Sigh. Let's see what God wants. Since he was sent here, did he just want him to be an ordinary person?" Qin Zhen sighed. "Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Now that you mention it, I miss Yao Er. I have to go and see." Qin Zhen watched as Lin Hui slowly walked out of the room. He muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear, "Xiaolan, what do you think I should do? Our child is on the path that we can't bear to see her go down." After coming out of Qin Zhen's room, Qin Feng's expression became a lot heavier. He never thought that through this conversation, he would inadvertently find out that his family actually hid such a secret, a cursed family. Also, how could the Qin family leave this primitive land so easily? How could it be passed down generation after generation without a single word being leaked? There were too many suspicious points. It was as if a large dark cloud was hanging over the Qin family, making this family a lot more mysterious in an instant. With mixed feelings, Qin Feng returned to his room. He closed the door and lay on his bed, quietly thinking about his father's words. This night was destined to be a sleepless one for him. The next day, Qin Feng, who had been deep in thought for the entire night, got up and strolled around the family. He didn't say anything and didn't do anything. He just wanted to see the place where he had lived for 16 years. The sun was setting in the west. Qin Feng quietly left the family and went to the city lord's palace. At this time, the others had already arrived. Since you're all here, it's time for us to move, Ouyang Qintian said. Then, he led the others and left through a secluded path. This ancient cave was connected to the underground. There was a passage here that didn't belong to any era. After the group passed through, they arrived at the forest outside the city of Sin. Chapter 76. Escaping the city of Sin. Among the mountains and forests, there was a river that had dried up for who knows how many years. The bottom of the river was so dry that there were cracks all over it. In a corner where weeds grew, a rustling sound could be heard. Then, a few silhouettes walked out. These people were naturally Qin Feng, Ouyang Shi, and the others who left the city of Sin through the underground passage. I didn't think that there would be such a passage in the city of Sin that connects to the outside world. How magical! Long Zhan said. Using the blurry moonlight, he looked around and said, "This place should be about 10 miles away from the city of Sin. Since it's still dark, I think we should leave this place as soon as possible. The further, the better," Xiao Yun suggested. The few of them discussed for a while and agreed that it would be best to leave under the cover of the night and get as far away from the city of Sin as possible. Qin Feng, what do you think? Seeing that Qin Feng was silent, Su Qin couldn't help but ask. I don't think this is a good idea. Qin Feng shook his head. Why is it not a good idea? Qin Feng didn't answer. Instead, he climbed onto a high ground and looked around. After a while, he said, "We will hide here and leave in half a month." Hearing this, everyone was shocked and looked at him suspiciously. Leaving in half a month? Are you kidding me? In 3 days, the slave-conquering army will arrive. They should use this time to get as far away from the city of Sin as possible. Why would he stay for half a month? Wasn't he just waiting for people to catch him? Now is the best time for us to leave. If we miss this time, the army from the Empire will arrive and we won't be able to leave. Xiao Yun and the others felt that it was best to leave immediately. Ouyang Shi frowned. She looked at Qin Feng and asked, "Do you have any ideas?" Qin Feng nodded and said, "The slave-conquering army happens once every 20 years. Even though we haven't experienced it before, we should all know that every time there is a big gathering of slaves, there will always be some escaped slave. This is already a phenomenon. It's impossible that the people from the Empire don't have a backup plan. Furthermore, the number of people who have managed to successfully enter the St. Ryuin is extremely few. Why is this so? Because most of the people who managed to escape from their residences were killed. This period of time is a sensitive period for both us and the imperial capital. We can easily escape from the city, but it doesn't mean that the road ahead will be easy. If I'm not wrong, the road to St. Ryuin has already been patrolled by the imperial capital's soldiers. This won't change because of our stay here." Xiao Yun shook his head. They were naturally aware of this situation. The trip to St. Ryuin would definitely be filled with danger, but what did that have to do with staying for half a month? Of course there will be changes. Qin Feng smiled and shook his head. In the near future, especially in the next few days, there will be many patrols around the city of Sin. After the slave hunt, there will be even more people here. Do you know why? Of course, it's to hunt us down. Long Zhan curled his lips. Qin Feng smiled and asked, "What would they think if they didn't discover us? What should we do?" "They will think that the city of Sin is hiding us and go back to investigate. If they can't find anything, they will assume that we are already on our way to St. Ryuin." Qin Feng nodded and said, "If that's the case, then they will definitely continue to hunt us down. This place will be emptied of power. When that happens, we will move out and follow them." Hearing this, the few of them were stunned. This Qin Feng was too daring. Others wanted nothing more than to stay far away from them, but he actually still followed behind them. Although this was crazy, it was still a good plan. During this period of time, We will hide in the underground cave and seal the entrance. They won't be able to find us, so they will naturally go to Saint Riuin to kill us," Qin Feng said. Everyone thought about it and then nodded. They returned to the underground cave and sealed the entrance tightly. Qin Feng used his spiritual energy and used it to observe from the outside. Only when he saw that there was nothing out of the ordinary did he relax. During this period of time, they had been hiding in the underground cave and focused on training. They were worried that the people from the capital hadn't all left, so they stayed for 20 days before they decided to leave. Qin Feng first used his spiritual energy to observe the outside. After finding nothing out of the ordinary, he worked with everyone to open the entrance. Everyone walked outside and carefully observed the situation. They could clearly see that there were many footprints nearby. They weren't in a hurry to leave. Instead, they waited until night fell before they left. Following the directions on the map, they headed north and avoided some important roads and checkpoints. "Stop!" Qin Feng gestured for everyone to stop. He laid down in the bushes and looked into the distance. Before long, a few silhouettes appeared. Their shiny armor was somewhat blinding under the moonlight. Soldiers from the capital. They didn't leave? Xiao Yun and the others were shocked. Qin Feng shook his head and said in a low voice, "They should be patrolling soldiers that were temporarily formed behind us." Hearing this, everyone sighed in relief. Only now did they realize that these armored soldiers weren't very alert. "If we launch a sneak attack, we should be able to get rid of them silently," Long Zhan said. "If they don't threaten us, there's no need to attack. Otherwise, it will only increase the chances of us being exposed." Qin Feng shook his head. Everyone slowly retreated and circled around from another direction. In one night, they traveled hundreds of miles. All of them took small, secluded paths. Just like that, they traveled at night and rested during the day. After a week, they were already hundreds of miles away from the city of Sin. At this point, their speed slowed down, because the location of the map stopped here. The distance between the city of Sin and Saint Riuin was very far and it was a secluded path. Even with the ability of the city leader, they couldn't find out everything. They could only draw a certain distance. "From now on, we can only rely on ourselves," Qin Feng said. Without a clear path, their speed slowed down. Not only did they have to be wary of the people from the imperial capital, they also had to face the spirit beasts in the forest. Not long after, they encountered a few soldiers. After following them for a long time and confirming that they weren't regular soldiers, Qin Feng and the others attacked like lightning. They killed the soldiers and destroyed the corpses. Then, they changed into their armor and swaggered away. "Qin Feng, this method of yours is really ruthless." Long Zhan grinned. "I think it's crazy enough." Xiao Yun and Su Qin looked at each other and smiled bitterly. As escaped slaves, they couldn't wait to hide. Qin Feng actually dared to greet them. Needless to say, they were so scared at that time. Along the way, they encountered many search teams. Because most of these patrolling soldiers weren't regular soldiers, they weren't recorded in the army. Therefore, both sides didn't know each other. This allowed Qin Feng and the others to take advantage of this loophole. Just like that, they pretended to be searching for escaped slaves and continued to approach the north. "I'll fight you!" Suddenly, they heard someone yell. Immediately after, the sound of weapons colliding could be heard. Chapter 77. Impersonation. Without hesitation, they ran toward the source of the sound and saw a group of people fighting. 6 soldiers surrounded 2 young people, a young man and a young woman, who were about 20 years old. The 2 of them were in a difficult situation, especially the young man, who was seriously injured. "You cold-blooded executioners, even if I die, I will break some of your front teeth." The young man, who was covered in blood, stood in front of the young woman and shouted, "Qing Ling, leave quickly." The young woman, who was called Qing Ling, was pale, but she was stubborn. She held her long sword and didn't want to leave. If we die together, she said. Qing Ling, alas. The young man sighed angrily. Humph. You should have known that you would end up like a fugitive slave, the leader of the soldiers said coldly. He didn't waste any time and waved his sword forward. However, before he could attack, someone stopped him and said respectfully with a smile, Sir, let us deal with these small fries, so that you don't have to dirty your hands. The soldier looked at that person with disdain. He knew they were trying to please him because they wanted to get the reward. However, he didn't care. He nodded and said impatiently, Kill them quickly, we have to chase after the next batch. Sir, please don't worry. I, Buttface, always do things quickly. The soldiers nodded and looked at the young man and woman. Their smiles disappeared immediately. What's going on? However, just as they were about to attack, a loud shout suddenly rang out, and then a few figures walked over. Buttface turned around and saw the soldiers, who were also wearing temporary armor. He said in a low voice, Can't you see we are dealing with fugitive slaves? How dare you talk to me like that? Qin Feng walked over and said angrily, Who is in charge of this place? He looked at the leader of the soldiers. The soldier frowned and said coldly, Pay attention to your status. Qin Feng coldly laughed. He walked up and exchanged glances with that soldier. After that, he slapped him with lightning speed as he spoke in anger. You are merely an ordinary soldier, yet you actually dare to speak to me in such a manner? Are you tired of living? The soldier was stunned. He was a soldier of the regular army. How dare someone hit him? Just as he was about to attack in anger, Qin Feng shouted, Do you know who I am? Come, tell me, what's your number, who's your superior, and who's your general? I'd like to see which bastard brought out such a blind thing like you. After being yelled at by Qin Feng, that person was momentarily unsure of what to do. He knew that every time the Great Slave Expedition took place, there would always be escaped slaves everywhere. Moreover, the prestigious clans of the imperial capital would always send some of their disciples out to gain experience. In order to not attract attention, many people would act like slaves and act as a temporary army. Don't tell me he met one. Tell me, who is your commander? Qin Feng asked loudly, full of vigor. Mu Lang, General Mu, the man whispered. Uncle Mu, you are Uncle Mu's soldier. Qin Feng looked surprised and said, For Uncle Mu's sake, I won't argue with you. You know General Mu? Nonsense. Last time, when Uncle Mu played chess with my father, he even taught me a battle technique. Do you want to give it a try? The soldier quickly waved his hand and said respectfully, So you are a disciple of an aristocratic family. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive me. Qin Feng waved his hand and looked at the man and woman. He asked, These are the escaped slaves? Yes, they are the escaped slaves of Yi City. We have already killed 4 of them, and there are only 2 left, the soldier said respectfully. Although he still didn't know which aristocratic family this young man in front of him was from, General Mu was on good terms with several aristocratic families. Even if he didn't know, he didn't dare to offend him. Qin Feng nodded and walked to the man and woman. He looked them up and down for a while and said, Some time ago I accidentally killed my maidservant. I happened to need another one. I think this one is quite good-looking, so I kept her. Hearing that, the soldier looked troubled and said, Young master, we have received a death order. If we meet any escaped slaves, we will kill them without mercy. Why? Are you doubting my decision? Qin Feng tilted his head and stared at the soldier indifferently. I wouldn't dare. The soldier quickly lowered his head and said, We will listen to young master's decision. Hearing that, Qin Feng nodded and reached out to lift the woman's chin. He smiled and said, This little girl is quite pretty. Don't touch her. The young man glared at Qin Feng and gripped the long sword in his hand tightly. Qin Feng glanced at him and stared at the woman. He said, What is your name? The woman stared at Qin Feng fiercely and said, If you want to kill me, then kill me. If I fall into your hands, I will accept it. Stubborn enough. I like it. Conquering someone like this will give me a sense of accomplishment. Qin Feng laughed loudly. Disgusting, the woman said fiercely. Qin Feng didn't care. He turned around and walked to the soldier. He said, "What is your name?" "Li Li." "And I know. I will talk to Uncle Mu and transfer you to another place." Qin Feng said, "Let me use your sword. This man dared to scold me. I will personally chop off his head." Hearing Qin Feng's words, Li Li quickly handed his sword to Qin Feng. He said with a face full of smiles, "Young master, where do you plan to transfer me?" He couldn't contain his joy. He secretly rejoiced that he didn't provoke this young master. Otherwise, let alone a promotion, he might not even be able to keep his life. Qin Feng took the sword and turned around. He weighed it in his hand and said softly, "I plan to transfer you." "Transfer to where?" "Transfer to..." Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a cold light. He suddenly turned around and waved his long sword. Poochie! Blood spurted out and Li Li's head rolled out. "Transfer to hell," Qin Feng snorted coldly. When he saw Ouyang Shi and the others were cold, he shouted, "What are you waiting for?" His change was so fast that it caught everyone off guard. Not to mention Buttface and the others, even Ouyang Shi and the others, who knew to act according to circumstances, didn't react in time. However, after all, they knew the plan. When Qin Feng finished speaking, they took action and stabbed their weapons into the bodies of the people next to him. 5 people were killed. The remaining Buttface was dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did they kill their own people? You are fake. Suddenly, he reacted. He quickly took out a signal flare and was about to launch it. However, his body stiffened and he couldn't move. He was tightly wrapped by Qin Feng's mind strength. Poochie! Qin Feng rushed up and slashed him in half at the waist. "Deal with these corpses." After saying that, Qin Feng looked at a young man and woman and said, "Hurry up and change into their clothes. We are leaving." Chapter 78. Exposed. The man and woman were still in a daze as they stared blankly at Qin Feng. Just a moment ago, he was still a frivolous and arrogant person, but in an instant, he had turned into a cold-blooded killer. "We are escaped slaves from the city of sin." Ouyang Shi walked over and gave them the battle clothes she had taken from them. She smiled and said, "This is just a way for us to hide our identities." At this moment, the man and woman finally understood. They nodded gratefully and changed into the battle clothes. Then, they quickly left with Qin Feng and the others. "Qin Feng, I didn't expect you to have so many identities." In a dense forest, Long Zhan gave Qin Feng a thumbs up with a face full of admiration. Xiao Yun and Su Qin also couldn't hide their admiration. Even Ouyang Shi couldn't help but look at him. As an escaped slave, not only did he not escape, he even dared to pretend to catch other escaped slaves. A thief crying thief was nothing more than this. What was even more amazing was that he even pretended to be a descendant of an aristocratic family. He stunned a group of soldiers and in the end, killed them effortlessly. They had never seen such a crazy person. "My heart can't take it when I'm with you." Xiao Yun smiled bitterly. The more dangerous a place is, the safer it is. Sometimes, the more dangerous a person is, under certain circumstances, our biggest protection. Qin Feng smiled. Listening to their conversation, Qin Ling and Bei both looked at Qin Feng in shock. Was this how they came all the way here? This was too legendary. Moreover, these plans and crazy actions were all done by the youngest person in the group. This brother is really admirable. Bai Yi shook his head and sighed. What else could he say? He didn't even dare to think about it. Unfortunately, the people who came with us were all killed. Qin Ling said softly. Her voice was filled with sadness. Hearing this, Bai Yi also sighed deeply. Their group of 6 had been hunted ever since they left Yi City. In the end, only the two of them survived. If it wasn't for Qin Feng and the others, they wouldn't have had a good ending. Seeing this, Ouyang Shi and the others didn't know how to comfort them. After all, if it happened to them, they wouldn't be able to take it either. If you have time to grieve, why don't you think about how to survive? Qin Feng said. You should have been prepared for the worst when you were willing to become a fugitive slave. Sacrifice is inevitable, just like the five of us. I can't guarantee that we can all safely reach St. Ruin. It's not just us. How many large and small cities have escaped slaves in the primitive lands? They're just like us, fighting for their mission. Won't they die? No, they'll die too. In fact, many will die. But so what? Since I've chosen this path, I'll have to bear the consequences of this path. I won't stop for anyone's death. I'll keep the sadness in my heart. What I need to do is to survive and overthrow this cruel slavery system. Only then will everyone's sacrifice not be in vain. Qin Feng's words were very cold and cruel, but they were very realistic, which made them fall into a daze. Qin Feng, if one day Qin Feng waved his hand and interrupted Xiao Yun's words. He said, if that time really comes and someone needs to be sacrificed, then I can only say that if you have the chance to escape, don't care about emotions. Compared to the mission on our shoulders, personal emotions are not worth mentioning. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Looking at everyone's expressions, Qin Feng sighed in his heart. He could only say this, but he couldn't let them be too optimistic. Although their journey had been very smooth, he knew that if they continued to pretend like this, there would be an end. They couldn't take advantage of every opportunity to avoid all the blockade. A real fierce battle was unavoidable. Right? You should have a map to St. Ruin, right? Qin Feng asked. Bei nodded, took out the sheepskin scroll, and opened it. With the help of the firelight, they analyzed the next path. Brother Qin Feng, I think we should unite more fugitives like us, Bei said. Ouyang Shi and the others nodded. Ouyang Shi said, that's a good idea. After all, there's strength in numbers. Hearing this, Qin Feng was silent for a while, then shook his head and said, we'll talk about this later. With a clear route, everyone's speed increased a lot. Although they occasionally encountered some search teams, they passed through them without any mishap. 3 days later, they were gradually approaching the northern part of the primitive land. At this point, they stopped. Yi City didn't have a clear map to St. Ruin, so they could only stop here. The people from the 10 great cities should know how to get to St. Ruin. We should find them and work together, Ouyang Shi said. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. In the end, he said, let's see how lucky we are. We can't place all our hopes on others. If there's no path, we'll find a way. Everyone nodded and continued to head north. Suddenly, Qin Feng's expression changed. He shouted, careful, there's an enemy attack. Everyone's expression changed. At the same time, a sharp sound pierced through the air. Clang, clang, clang. Qin Feng's mental power that had been spreading outside suddenly exploded. It turned into a mental blade and collided with the iron arrows. Suddenly, the sound of metal hitting metal could be heard. After being hit, the trajectory of the iron arrows changed and they all missed. Rumble. Then, the ground trembled slightly and smoke rose from the ground. Ouyang Shi and the others' expressions changed. They saw the iron arrows falling to the ground and creating a big hole. Obviously, if they were hit, they would die without a doubt. Rustle. The branches in the distance trembled. A few masked soldiers jumped down. Each of them was holding a black longbow in their hands. Who dares to be so bold to hit me, Lu Shiqing? Qin Feng shouted. He stared at them angrily and said, who are you? Tell me your names. At the same time, he secretly transmitted to them, our identities should be exposed. Prepare for battle. Everyone held their weapons tightly and nodded solemnly. Seeing that they did not answer, Qin Feng walked up and put on the arrogant look of an aristocratic family's disciple. Which army are you from? Tell me your names. I'll let my Uncle Mu, General Mu, punish you. Let me tell you, my Uncle Mu is… Whoosh! Before he could finish his words, a sharp iron sword shot towards him. Qin Feng was already on guard and dodged. His mental power spread and turned into a long spear, shooting over. At the same time, he rushed over. Leave this person to me. You guys deal with the others. The leader ordered. The others immediately separated and rushed to Ouyang Shi and the others. He's a mental power master. The masked soldier who stayed in the same place was shocked. A pair of eyes that were more beautiful than a woman's stared at Qin Feng. Boom! Qin Feng punched out, but it missed. His face changed. He quickly gathered his mental power behind his back. At the same time, a slender white palm fell. Qin Feng rushed forward. At the same time, the power of water was released. It turned into water snakes and attacked the soldier, resolving his crisis. Chapter 79. Big Misunderstanding. Qin Feng's face was solemn. Water snakes coiled around his body and stabbed forward. Not only did that person not retreat, but he also rushed forward. He was as agile as a monkey and dodged all of Qin Feng's attacks. Xiao, however, just as he was about to get close, a small spiritual blade suddenly shot out. It was too sudden and that person could not dodge it. He could only use his spiritual energy to deflect the spiritual blade. Qin Feng slapped out with his palms and 2 water pillars shot out. That person was expressionless. He waved his arm and shot out a fierce spiritual energy, shattering the water pillars. He then continued forward. Qin Feng sneered and formed a seal with his hands. With a low shout, 2 crescent moons suddenly appeared in the 2 scattered water pillars. The crescent moons collided with each other and instantly produced a strong explosive force. That person could not dodge in time and was sent flying. Xiao. On the left, a spiritual weapon pierced towards him. That person slapped the air and spiritual energy gushed out, shattering all the spiritual weapons. Whoosh! Suddenly, 7 to 8 water snakes appeared in the sky and swooped down ferociously. His body was in mid-air, and that person could not circulate his spiritual energy. He could only use all the spiritual energy he could. Using this force, his body quickly fell. However, a black shadow was faster than him. Like a bolt of lightning, it quickly hit that person's lower abdomen and the 2 of them fell heavily. Before landing on the ground, Qin Feng twisted his body and rode on the waist of that person. Both of his palms fiercely slammed down, and a ferocious force spread out. That person's body trembled, and a muffled groan came out from his throat. As he landed on the ground with a crash, Qin Feng fiercely threw 2 punches at that person's body. Then, he flipped that person over. His legs nimbly wrapped around that person's waist, one arm locked that person's neck, and the other hand passed under that person's armpit and pressed on his chest. It's a girl. When the palm fell, Qin Feng immediately realized that it was a girl after the accident with Ouyang Jing. However, he did not show any mercy and even pinched her hard. In a battle of life and death, there was no difference between men and women. Since he wanted to kill them, he did not care about the difference between men and women. Ah! A sharp cry came from the woman's throat. Shut up! Qin Feng fiercely punched her lower abdomen, and then his big hand pressed down again. He shouted loudly, "All of you stop or I'll kill her." Ouyang Shi and the others were obviously not a match for these soldiers, and this person seemed to be the leader. Qin Feng could only use her as a hostage, otherwise, he would have already killed her. The battle over there stopped, and several soldiers glared at Qin Feng. "If you don't want her to die, let my friends go. Otherwise, she will be the first to die." As he spoke, his mental power spread out and transformed into many small weapons, which were distributed to the few fatal acupoints of the controlled woman. "Let her go!" a soldier roared in exasperation. His eyes were red, and he wanted nothing more than to kill Qin Feng. Qin Feng lay on the ground and wrapped the woman in his arms. His eyes signaled to Ouyang Shi and the others. They quickly ran over, and at the same time, weapons fell beside the woman. Take another step and she will die. Qin Feng shouted coldly. The man immediately stopped, but his eyes were still staring at Qin Feng. We don't want to make things worse. I just want to know which unit you are from. How dare you try to kill me, Lu Shiqing? My enemies sent you? Qin Feng asked. The soldier didn't reply but panted heavily. You don't want to say it, huh? I, Lu Shiqing, have done a lot of things. Why don't you go to the imperial capital and ask around? Do you think I'm called the little demon king Lu Shiqing for nothing? You want to kill me with just you? Dream on. However, if you can turn over a new leaf, it's not like I can't let you go. What to do is up to you. Senior brother, don't worry about me. Hurry up and leave. Have you forgotten our previous agreement? At this time, the woman who was restrained by Qin Feng suddenly shouted. The soldier was stunned. He shook his head in pain and said loudly, Junior sister, how can I leave you behind? Even if I die, I want to die with you. You. The woman was furious. She gritted her teeth and said to Qin Feng, What do you want? Either you cripple your own meridians and I can let you live, or you turn over a new leaf. Tell me, which enemy of mine sent you to kill me? Qin Feng said. Seeing that Qin Feng was getting further and further away from Lu Shiqing's path, Ouyang Shi curled her lip. She had already been seen through. What was the point of pretending? Well, I think we should shut up. Qin Feng glanced at Ouyang Shi and shouted, How can a lowly servant like you speak here? Do you think I, the little demon king Lu Shiqing, am so easy to provoke? I have always been the only one who can bully others. Whoever dares to bully me, I will repay them tenfold. Ouyang Shi's face twitched. He actually called her a lowly servant. I will give you one more chance. As long as you stand on my side, I can let bygones be bygones. Really, Lu Shiqing, as long as we tell you who sent us, you will let us go? The woman said. Of course, but the premise is that you can't make a move on me. Qin Feng said. Okay, I will tell you. It was that person from the Chu clan who paid us. Chu clan, that chaotic battle actually dared to make a move on me. Qin Feng was so angry that his teeth itched. Seeing him like this, Ouyang Shi and the others were speechless. This guy was really addicted to pretending. Even they were about to believe him. However, those people also seemed to believe him. Several people's hearts lit up. They admired Qin Feng from the bottom of their hearts. It seemed that the other party was not sure of their identity. Qin Feng's perseverance in pretending was really effective. Several people looked at each other and sighed in relief. As long as they believed that Qin Feng was Lu Shiqing, then naturally they would not make a move on him. Can you let us go now? The woman said. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. He was a little embarrassed. They really believed that he was Lu Shiqing, but this name was just made up. How could he know if there was a Lu Shiqing in the imperial capital? Just as he was hesitating, he suddenly felt a powerful spiritual energy emanating from the woman in his arms. The degree of ferocity made him shudder. At the critical moment, Qin Feng used the 100 Calamity Heaven-devouring art. A powerful devouring power erupted and swallowed the spiritual energy emitted from the woman's body. What's going on? The woman exclaimed and quickly restrained her spiritual energy. However, it was still continuously absorbed by the other party. I knew you couldn't be trusted. Qin Feng coldly snorted and dispersed the devouring power. This woman was their life-saving talisman. They couldn't kill her. Junior sister, stop pretending. With that, the soldier took off his battle clothes and ordered the others to do the same. What was going on? This time, it was Qin Feng's turn to be stunned. Heavenly Sun City, Fushimi. This was a long-haired young man with a handsome face and a spirited gaze. He stared at Lu Shiqing and spoke, Lu Shiqing, release my junior sister and we will mind our own business. If not, I dare to guarantee that none of you here will be able to survive. Since surrendering means death anyway, we might as well fight it out. You have two choices now. 1. Kill my junior sister and then I'll kill all of you. 2. Let go of my junior sister and everyone will leave. We won't kill you. You're from Heavenly Sun City? Ouyang Shi, Bai Yi, and the others asked in a daze. Fushimi glanced at them and ignored them. Instead, he looked at Qin Feng and asked, Lu Shiqing, what's your choice? How can I believe you? Qin Feng said. I believe you. Ouyang Shi said. Looking at Qin Feng, who was tightly restraining the woman, the corner of her mouth twitched. She couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, Qin Feng, why are you still pretending to be Lu Shiqing? Heavenly Sun City is one of the top 10 super cities. They're the same as us. Chapter 80. 9 Spiritual Mountains. I'm from Sin City, they're from Yi City. After taking off their battle suits, Ouyang Shi and the others decisively retreated far away, leaving Qin Feng alone in the wind in a mess. At this moment, Qin Feng's expression was quite interesting. He felt as if he was struck by lightning, charred on the outside and tender on the inside. His whole body was indescribably uncomfortable. There were actually people like them, pretending to be soldiers who were hunting the escaped slaves. Moreover, the two of them had met. Most importantly, what was he doing now? Wasn't this a trap? Seeing Ouyang Shi and the rest hide far away with an indifferent expression, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. Not far away, Fushimi recovered from his shock. His body trembled slightly, and the corner of his eyes twitched violently, as if he had been electrocuted. The veins on his forehead bulged. How long are you going to hug me for? The girl's cold voice came. Qin Feng's scalp went numb, and he quickly let go. He stood up and patted the dust off his body, as if nothing had happened, he said. So it was a misunderstanding. If that's the case, we'll meet again. With that, Qin Feng turned and left without looking back. Qin Feng, they're from the 10 great cities, we should go with them. Ouyang Shi pulled Qin Feng, her face was full of smiles, and Qin Feng couldn't help but want to rub his feet against her. He sighed in his heart, turned around and asked, Are you really from Heavenly Sun City? Fushimi looked coldly at Qin Feng and said, I really want to kill you. You're afraid you don't have the ability? Qin Feng laughed in disdain, glanced at the girl and said, She's an example, you want to try it too. Although this Fushimi was strong, and had reached the late stage of the Pioneer Sea realm, he was not the same as when he fought with Inren. After successfully opening his Sea of Qi, his strength increased greatly. If they really fought, he was confident that he could take down Fushimi. Is that so? You want to try? Fushimi took a step forward and a ferocious spiritual energy swept out. His aura was much stronger than Ouyang Shi's. Interesting. Qin Feng didn't care at all. If I can subdue that woman, why would I be afraid of you? Lecture, if you didn't sneak attack me, would you have succeeded? The woman spat and snorted. In a battle of life and death, we don't talk about the process, only the result. The result is that I subdued you. Qin Feng shrugged. Then try to subdue me too, Fushimi said. Qin Feng slowly narrowed his eyes. Seeing that the two of them were about to fight, Ouyang Shi hurriedly stepped forward and said, This is all a misunderstanding. There's no need to fight. We should think of a way to avoid the seal and enter the St. Ryuin. Join forces with you? Fushimi glanced at Qin Feng's group with disdain. The city of Sin, the city of Yi, you are all barbarian cities. What right do you have to join forces with us? Hearing this, Ouyang Shi's face turned angry. We are from a remote area. But don't you forget who we subdued. It would have been better if she didn't mention it. Once she did, Fushimi's killer's intent intensified. If you want to fight, think about the consequences. Qin Feng's body shook as his spiritual energy seeped out. At the same time, his spiritual energy transformed into a long spear. The force of water wrapped around his body and turned into a water snake. He said, "You are strong, but we are not easy to deal with. If we really fight, I can guarantee that we will be discovered before the victor is decided. Let it go, senior brother. Don't forget our mission." The woman shook her head and looked at Qin Feng. "If you can make it to the Saint Ruin alive, we will settle our debts." Qin Feng shrugged and replied, "Don't be too confident. Don't think that just because you are from a big city you are better than us. We are all slaves who escape. Who is better than who?" The woman was too lazy to argue and led the group away. "We should go too. The commotion here will attract people's attention," Qin Feng said and turned to leave. "What a pity. We missed it." Oh, Yangshi sighed. It would be a lie to say that it wasn't a pity. After all, people from a big city would know which path to the Saint Ruin was easier. "It's better to rely on ourselves than others." Qin Feng shook his head. The group picked up the armor on the ground and slowly entered the forest. Without a clear path, they could only slowly explore. The closer they got to the Saint Ruin, the more enemies there were, and the stronger they were. "After crossing this mountain range, the Saint Ruin will be in front of us," Bai Yi said as she looked at the endless mountain range. "This mountain range won't be easy to cross," Xiao Yun said. Everyone knew that this was the last barrier. Once they passed through, they would be received by the students of the Saint Ruin. At that time they would be safe. However, the imperial capital also knew this, so they had set up layers of blockades in this last mountain range. Looking at the huge mountain range that looked like a sleeping azure dragon, Qin Feng's eyes were deep. Divine light flickered in his eyes. These days, he had gained some understanding of the terrain of the primitive land. This was the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range, one of the 3 forbidden areas of the primitive lands. It was said that no one had been able to find out what was inside the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. Many people had entered, but without any accidents, they either went mad or disappeared, never to be seen again. There were even rumors that the imperial capital's god had investigated it, but no news came out. Later, they only knew that the god had gone into seclusion for many years before reappearing. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range was. Even a god wouldn't dare to enter it. They were only at the edge of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range, the Bald Tail Mountain Range. They hadn't really touched the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. The Bald Tail Mountain Range wasn't a true mountain range, but rather the tail end of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. Qin Feng was considering whether or not they should take the path between the Bald Tail Mountain Range and the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. If necessary, they could enter the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. The imperial capital had set up a clear dividing line between the 2 mountain ranges. This side of the dividing line was a safe area, while the other side was a place of death. Since ancient times, no one had dared to step into this dividing line. If they took this line, the imperial capital's threat would be greatly reduced. But if they did, they would have to face the unknown dangers of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. Qin Feng didn't know what to do. After thinking for a while, Qin Feng told the others his idea. "You're crazy. You're looking to die." The others stared with wide eyes. They didn't even dare to think about going along the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. "Didn't I say that the edges of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range aren't dangerous?" "But the Bald Tail Mountain Range is the edge of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. It's not a real mountain range. It's just that it's been investigated and confirmed to be a safe area of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range." The others shook their heads. They wouldn't dare take this path even if they were beaten to death. The legends of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range were too terrifying. If they entered, no one would have a good ending. After discussing for a long time, they still didn't know how to cross the Bald Tail Mountain Range. After all, they knew nothing about this place. They didn't even know where to go. If they entered recklessly, they would be surrounded by the imperial capital's army. Chapter 81. The sneak attack failed. Qin Feng's group walked through the forest, cautiously observing their surroundings. Although they were still a few miles away from the real Nine-Spirit Mountain range, they still felt uneasy. Occasionally, they would see the imperial capital's army. Fortunately, Qin Feng's spiritual power allowed them to avoid them in advance, so they didn't really encounter them. These are the true warriors who have been on the battlefield. Their hearts jump. These people were far from the temporary army they had encountered before. Each one of them had climbed out of piles of corpses on the battlefield. Their bodies emitted an austere aura. Their journey was more daunting than dangerous, and they didn't encounter any danger. Whether it was the native spirit beasts or human warriors, they avoided them in advance. This was the advantage of being a spiritual master. They could silently investigate without being discovered. Suddenly, Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. Under his spiritual power, he sensed a weak spiritual power fluctuation 1,000 meters away. He signaled to them, then carefully approached. This was a relatively open area. There were dozens of people surrounding a dozen people, engaging in a chaotic battle. But what surprised Qin Feng was that these people weren't all soldiers. Most of them were wearing servants' clothes. They should be the disciples of an aristocratic family who came out to gain experience, said Bei, her voice cold. Qin Feng nodded. He already knew that during each slave hunt, many families in the imperial capital would send out some outstanding disciples to gain experience and hunt down escaped slaves. Most of these people were wearing servants' clothes. Clearly, they weren't part of the imperial capital's army. Qin Feng, what should we do? Ouyang Shi and the others looked at Qin Feng. These days, Qin Feng had led them here, resolving danger after danger. In their hearts, they had long since regarded Qin Feng as the leader of this group. These people are all escaped slaves. We should think of a way to help them. But the people surrounding them aren't weak. With just the few of us, we can't shake them. These servants were not weak. The weakest of them was at the Sea Expansion Realm, and there were even some at the late stage of the Sea Expansion Realm. In addition, there were 5 soldiers from the army. They were an even bigger threat. It could be seen that these 5 soldiers alone were enough to suppress most of the escaped slaves. If we don't take care of those warriors, we won't be able to save them. If we can split them up and break them apart one by one, it might work. Listening to their suggestions, Qin Feng secretly shook his head. Some of these methods were indeed feasible, but they would take too long and require a precise plan. They simply did not have the time to arrange so many things. Qin Feng's eyes flashed. He suddenly saw that on the other side of the battlefield, there was a group of people that hadn't moved yet. And in this group of people, there was a youth in golden robes. Looking at his posture, he was like a moon surrounded by stars. Qin Feng guessed that this person should be a disciple of some aristocratic family. Qin Feng's eyes flickered for a while and he whispered in their ears. Are you crazy? Everyone's eyes widened. This is the safest method. Qin Feng said, if it succeeds, not only can we save these people, but we can also catch them all in one fell swoop. They stared blankly at him. This idea was simply too crazy. It was crazier than anything they had done before. If this spread out, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. This matter may have very terrible consequences. For us, the worst result is death. Is there anything worse than that? Qin Feng asked. They were silent for a moment. After a long while, Long Zhan gritted his teeth and said, I'll do it. If it succeeds, even if I die, it'll be worth it. The few of them looked at each other and then nodded. Young Master Jin, the quality of these escaped slaves is too low. There's no need for you to make a move. That's right. What kind of status does young Master Jin have? Ordinary escaped slaves are not worthy of young Master Jin to make a move. Only the escaped slaves of the top 10 supercities are worthy of being young Master Jin's opponent. A group of people were there flattering, nodding their heads and bowing. They were the perfect henchmen. The youth who was called young Master Jean had a cold smile on his face. The bloody massacre in front of him was nothing more than a game to him. "Still haven't found the escaped slaves in the super cities?" he asked with a smile on his face. "There's some news." A servant with a pointy mouth and monkey cheeks smiled and said, "The people of the Kong family seem to have found the traces of Tianyang Cheng's escaped slaves. They have already brought a few wolf rider to chase after them." "Tianyang Cheng?" Young Master Jean smiled coldly and said, "Quickly get rid of these people. We'll hurry over." At this moment, several spirit power bolts shot over and sent them flying. Several people rushed over. "You lowly escaped slaves, you actually dare to sneak attack young Master Jean." The pointy mouth and monkey cheeks youth shouted to the few people beside him, "You guys, kill them." Immediately, the group of people surrounding young Master Jean rushed up and blocked the group of people who suddenly appeared. A few more came. How interesting. Young Master Jean didn't panic at all. He looked at the group of people with interest. His gaze moved, then stared at Ouyangshi. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes as he said, "Leave that woman for me." "Poochie." As soon as his voice fell, a head was thrown high up and blood spurted out. Young Master Jin's pupils shrank. In fact, when his voice fell, he felt that something was wrong. He quickly rolled on the ground and saw the body of the servant beside him split into two. What a strange attack! Young Master Jean felt a chill down his spine. If he didn't instinctively feel that something was wrong, he wouldn't have ended up much better than the servant. Just as he got up, young Master Jean only felt a blur in front of his eyes. Then, a fierce force covered his face. He shouted in a low voice and punched out. Golden light surged and collided heavily with the fist that suddenly attacked. Bang! Young Master Jean retreated a few steps before stabilizing his body. His face was gloomy as he stared at the person who attacked. Qin Feng's face flashed with a touch of astonishment. This young Master Jean looked spoiled, but his strength really couldn't be underestimated. Under his sneak attack, not only did he avoid the spiritual killing move, he even blocked the close combat attack. But he was only at the middle stage of the Pioneer Sea realm. A cultivator at this level, let alone sneak attack, even if he fought with his full strength, it was impossible for him to only retreat a few steps. Qin Feng's face gradually became heavy. He knew that his evaluation of these aristocratic family's disciples was too low. These people were not flowers in a greenhouse. Their strong foundation was enough to make them perfect in every realm, and they could look down on people of the same realm. An early-stage Pioneer Sea realm slave dares to sneak attack me. Young Master Jin's face was full of disdain and disgust. He said, "But you have angered me. I will give you the punishment of tearing you apart with my own hands." Chapter 82. Hostage Qin Feng was overjoyed. He was afraid that the other party wouldn't attack him. Young Master Jin's entire body was covered in a golden light. His fist was as fast as lightning as it blasted towards Qin Feng. The golden light engulfed the entire area, and it was filled with a ferocious aura. Qin Feng didn't dodge, but faced it head-on. Bang! The two fists collided, and young Master Jin's body trembled, while Qin Feng staggered back. "Very good, you're a good slave. You can actually block one of my fists." Young Master Jin nodded, but soon shook his head, his eyes filled with regret. "Unfortunately, if you didn't sneak attack me, I would have taken you as my punching bag." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't hold back and quickly attacked Qin Feng. Facing young Master Jin's barrage of attacks, Qin Feng only exchanged a few blows before choosing to dodge. Although this young Master Jin was loathsome, his strength was indeed formidable. Moreover, he had clearly received good nurturing and had the support of many heavenly treasures. His strength was even stronger than ordinary mid-sea expansion experts. However, for Qin Feng this was all. Although young Master Jean was strong, it was still within his range of tolerance. He dodged because he wanted to see what kind of ability this young master of an aristocratic family had. Bang! After another exchange, Qin Feng retreated a few steps before barely stabilizing himself. Although young Master Jean didn't move, his eyes were extremely gloomy. After so long, he still couldn't completely take down this slave. Your strength is not bad and I admire it. I'll give you a chance. Be my sparring partner. Young Master Jean stared at Qin Feng, then waved his hand and said to the servants who had rushed over to help him, I'll deal with this cheap slave myself. Young Master Jean, this cheap slave doesn't deserve it. You dare to attack me? Interesting. Young Master Jean smiled and said, Cheap slave, how about it? Will you accept my charity? Qin Feng looked around and said, With just you, can you beat me? If I hadn't deliberately held back, you would have been killed by me. Good, very good. When young Master Jean heard this, he laughed instead of getting angry. Hee, I don't know how long it's been since I've been rejected. Although he was smiling, the killing intent in his eyes became even more intense. He didn't know how many slaves were jealous of his offer, but the slave in front of him, whom he slightly admired, not only refused, but also despised him. This made him lose some face. Layers of golden halos emanated from his body as a powerful aura rippled out. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. As expected of a disciple of a major clan, the treatment he received was indeed different. He had grasped quite a number of earth arts and battle techniques, and his combat prowess was far superior to the enslaved people of the same level. This was not to say that the slaves were weak, but that the cultivation efforts of both sides were different, and the cultivation resources could not be mentioned in the same breath. Take Bei for example. He was also at the middle stage of the sea expansion realm, but in Qin Feng's eyes, this young Master Jean was still superior. After all, the cultivation resources provided by Yi City's 100 clans were far inferior to that of young Master Jin's clan. And these things that they risked their lives to exchange for, in the eyes of others, might not even be worth a glance. It was like two people with equal strength, one with a saber and the other with bare hand. How could they fight? But Qin Feng was not in this category. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his mental power silently spread out. Ouyang she could not hold on any longer, and he had to quickly subdue young Master Jean. Qin Feng quickly rushed over, using the Fist Emperor's 3 tyrants. 3 punches overlapped, and blasted towards young Master Jean. The latter smiled disdainfully, and similarly punched out, golden brilliance sweeping out. But in the next moment, his expression changed. In this attack, he was actually forced back. Similarly, Qin Feng was not in a good state. Intense pain came from his fist, and there was blood on the ground. Although he had the upper hand, it was not obvious, and this was the result of him using the Fist Emperor's 3 tyrants. I can't drag this out any longer. The power of water turned into a water snake, quickly wrapping around young Master Jin's body. At the same time, the mental power that had already been prepared turned into a big hand, holding young Master Jean tightly. Then he rushed over as fast as lightning. Before the latter could shake off the restraints, a palm containing powerful spiritual power reached for his throat. Get lost! Young Master Jean shouted angrily, and golden light surged out from his body. But in the next second, his expression changed wildly, and he revealed a look of disbelief. His spiritual power was actually absorbed by the other party's palm. The spiritual power in his body was even more uncontrollably surging towards the palm. From Qin Feng's attack to young Master Jean being subdued, everything happened in a flash. By the time the servants reacted, it was already too late. Lowly slave, let go of young Master Jean. A few servants shouted angrily, threatening Qin Feng. Boom! Suddenly, a strong murderous aura erupted, and a sharp spear tip pierced over, and a sharp sound came from the air. Qin Feng's pupils contracted, and his mental power quickly spread out, attached to the tip of the spear, and blocked it. The spear pierced the air, and the soldier was stunned. Just as he was about to attack again, Qin Feng coldly shouted, "If you move again, I dare not guarantee that young master's head is still on his neck." The soldier did not dare to act rashly. A pair of sharp eyes stared at Qin Feng and shouted, "Let go of young Master Jin." Qin Feng ignored him, but looked at young Master Jin and said, "Let's make a deal. Let those people go." "Humph!" Young Master Jin coldly snorted and said, "Do you dare to kill me? If I die, none of you will be able to survive." Hearing this, Qin Feng laughed and said, "If I don't kill you, will you let us go? If I must die, do you think I will be happy to let a noble young Master Jin like you be buried with us?" After saying that, the power of devouring intensified, and more than half of the spiritual power was swallowed by Qin Feng. Young Master Jin's face gradually turned pale. "All of you stop, let them go," young Master Jin shouted. He was really afraid. Who was he? He was the son of a noble family. The lives of these slaves added together could not compare to his. Only a fool would perish together with these lowly slaves. With his order, those people stopped. Ouyang Shi and the others gathered behind Qin Feng. "Do you know where to go?" Qin Feng secretly transmitted to Ouyang Shi and the others. "But you?" Ouyang Shi said worriedly. "Don't worry, I have a way to escape." Qin Feng shook his head and said, "Hurry up and leave." Seeing this, everyone did not dare to hesitate and quickly left. "Can you let me go now?" Qin Feng slapped him and said, "Be obedient. When it's time to let you go, I will naturally let you go." Young Master Jin was stunned by the slap. He stared blankly at Qin Feng. Who was he? He was the young master of the Jin clan. His status was frighteningly high, but today, he was slapped by a slave. This made his chest explode with anger, but he did not dare to resist. "That's good." Seeing that he was no longer struggling, Qin Feng nodded. He glanced behind him and estimated that it was about time. He slapped his palm on young Master Jin's chest and lifted him up. With a turn, he tossed him out. Boom! Young Master Jin's body flipped in midair. After landing, he smashed into a large group of people. "Young Master Jin, are you okay?" A group of servants quickly surrounded him. "What the hell are you all standing there for? Chase after him and kill all these slaves. Leave that slave for me, I want to torture him bit by bit." Young Master Jin roared. He took out a large number of pills from his bosom and stuffed them into his mouth. He stared at the direction Qin Feng ran with hatred. Chapter 83. Crazy move in the mountain forest. Qin Feng was running at high speed. However, he always maintained a certain distance from young Master Jin. He would not be caught up, nor would he be shaken off. In this way, after running for more than 10 minutes, Qin Feng also saw Ouyang Shi and others waiting for him at the foot of the mountain. "Hurry up the mountain," Qin Feng said, and was the first to rush up the mountain. Everyone did not hesitate and followed him into the mountain. "Do you think you can avoid the pursuit by hiding in the mountain?" Young Master Jin appeared on his horse, looking at the people who fled up the mountain in panic. A sneer appeared on his face, and shouted, "Kill them for me, kill a runaway slave, reward 100 gold, catch the runaway slave, reward 1,000 gold, revoke the slave registration." The group of servants' eyes instantly turned red. To them, the removal of their slave status was undoubtedly a big deal. This way, they could live openly in the imperial capital and not be labeled as servants. "Brothers, kill!" A group of people dismounted from their horses and rushed up the mountain. The mountain road was rugged and there were many spirit beasts. Both sides inevitably encountered spirit beast attacks, but Qin Feng is a spirit master after all. He can perceive some dangerous areas in advance. So in the end, they disappeared into the mountain forest, temporarily escaping the pursuit. They were at the bottom of a cliff. Huge rocks were scattered about, and there was a natural cave below. Everyone was hiding inside. Escaping up the mountain doesn't seem to have much effect. In the cave, a young man frowned and looked at Qin Feng, who closed his eyes to rest. He knew that the leader of these people is Qin Feng. A group of people looked at him. Originally everyone thought that as long as they went up the mountain, they would have a chance to live. But now they found that going up the mountain is useless. They are still being chased, and they have to deal with spirit beast attacks at any time. The speed of death has indeed slowed down, but this is only a delay. It can't solve the fundamental problem. Ouyang Shi and others did not make a sound. They even regretted being so crazy. Qin Feng opened his eyes and looked at the group of people they saved. Then he chuckled and said, "I never told you that you can live if you escape up the mountain." "What do you mean?" The young man frowned. "This brother, you are not playing with us, are you? It was your people who told us that as long as we escaped up the mountain, we would have a chance to survive." Someone spoke up, his face full of dissatisfaction. "Is this how you talk to your savior?" The few of them were stunned and a little embarrassed. No matter what, the person who had saved them from a hopeless situation was the young man in front of them. "My name is Yu Mu." The young man revealed his name and said, "Brother, we can't hide on the mountain forever, right? Although this place is close to the 9-Spirit Mountain range, those people will not give up so easily." Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded and said, "This game has been destined from the beginning. Between the hunter and the prey, only one can survive. No matter where we run, we can't get rid of their pursuit, unless he escapes into the 9-Spirits Mountain range. If that's the case, why are we still running? Why don't we just fight them from the start?" Someone asked in confusion. "Because there are many spirit beasts on the mountain, it's a good place to bury them," Qin Feng said with a smile. What kind of reason was this? Was he trying to find a good place for himself? The expressions of the group of people did not look good. "Brother, what do you plan to do? Tell us," Yumu said. He always thought that someone who could think of subduing young Master Jean and save them would not be so bored. If there was no other way, he could completely ignore them. There was no need for him to get involved and die. Therefore, he thought that Qin Feng must have a backup plan. His gaze swept over Yumu and the group of people one by one. After pondering for a moment, Qin Feng asked in a low voice, "Does everyone want to live? Even if it means risking everything?" Everyone was confused. If they did not want to live, what was the point of fighting? "We've already come this far. Who doesn't want to live?" Yumu frowned and said, "Brother, don't keep us in suspense. Just tell us. As long as there's a chance to live, we'll go through mountains of swords and seas of fire." "That's right. As long as we can live, we'll do anything," the group of people echoed. Seeing this, Qin Feng nodded slightly and said, "That's what you said. In order to live, we'll fight with our lives." "Now can you tell us your plan?" Yumu asked. "Yes." Qin Feng nodded and looked at the group of people. He said, "I just said that in this game, only one side can survive. They won't let us go, so I think." As he spoke till here, Qin Feng suddenly stopped. The corners of his mouth curled into a cruel arc as he said in a low voice, "If we want to live, we can only kill all the people who are chasing after us." The moment these words came out, the cave fell silent. Everyone stared at Qin Feng, dumbfounded. "Kill those people?" Someone swallowed with difficulty and said in a hoarse voice, "That's right. If we want to live, we have to kill them all." Qin Feng smiled. "These people are all people of status. If they die, the sky will be pierced. Many people will be implicated." At this moment, even the calm Yumu was shocked by Qin Feng's crazy plan. The disciples of aristocratic families were not like the army. If these people were killed, it would definitely cause anger. If they were investigated, the consequences would be unpredictable. Not only them, but their families would also be massacred. But who will know that we did it? Qin Feng shook his head with a smile, but his tone made everyone's heart turn cold. There are many spirit beasts in this mountain. They were excited and chased up the mountain. In the end, they were eaten by the spirit beast. As long as we can kill them all without anyone knowing, then pretend that we were attacked by spirit beasts. Or we can just disappear without a corpse. Even if they suspect, they won't be able to find out that we did it. The group of people stared blankly at Qin Feng with a calm smile. They felt a chill run down their backs. This person was simply too crazy. Who would have thought that his appetite was so big that he wanted to kill all the disciples of the aristocratic families? This was too crazy. It was simply beyond the imagination of a normal person. Ouyang Shi and the others knew that these people would have such a reaction. They all smiled helplessly. If they hadn't followed Qin Feng all the way here and understood him, they would never have agreed to do this. We're escaped slaves. We're like fire and water with them. Everyone, think about it carefully. After saying this, Qin Feng didn't say anything else. Those who were chosen were not fools. Some things were not good to say too much. Appropriate advice would be better. The group of people's faces were filled with hesitation and struggle. The consequences of this matter were too terrifying. Once this matter spread out, not to mention them, even the families behind them and the cities they were in would be implicated. These were the disciples of aristocratic families. Their status was frighteningly high. This idea, others wouldn't even dare to think about it, but he had to put it into action. You all agree to do this? Yu Mu looked at Ouyang Shi and the others. They all nodded. Ouyang Shi said, "We've followed him all the way here. Most of his decisions are correct." "I'll do it." After a moment of silence, someone spoke up. "I also agree. Since we've been forced into a desperate situation, we'll kill them until the sky turns dark and the earth turns dark. Even if we die, we'll tear off a piece of flesh from their bodies." Chapter 84. Counterattack. They were all young experts selected from various places. Which one of them was easy to deal with? They all knew that if they didn't go all out, they would definitely die. We don't have the advantage in an open fight. We have to plan this properly, said Yu Mu after thinking for a while. Of course. I've already memorized the terrain of this area. Qin Feng gathered a few people together to discuss the details of this operation. An hour later, these people all spread out and disappeared into the boundless mountain forest. Qin Feng stood at a high vantage point, looking down at the people occasionally appearing in the forest. He sneered. "I really didn't expect you to be so bold," said Ouyang Shi, Bai Yi, and Yu Mu as they walked over. "In order to survive, I have to do something even crazier." Qin Feng glanced at the three of them and said indifferently, "This is just a calamity. There are still many obstacles on the path to St. Ryuin. When the time comes, there might be even crazier things." The three of them were silent. For slaves like them, they were born to be slaves, and they could only charge forward. If they were too careful and lost their drive, they could only become miserable members of the Wheel of Fate and live a miserable life of being enslaved. "We should also move." The three of them exchanged a glance and left. Once the three of them left, the place immediately quieted down. Qin Feng stayed for a while before leaving as well. There were over 20 people in their group, and they were all elites that had been selected from various places. They didn't have the advantage in numbers, but in terms of individual combat power, they were definitely stronger than young Master Jin's group of slaves. However, those soldiers and a few late-stage C expansion experts were a bit troublesome. Qin Feng's plan was to spread out and then gather their strength to eliminate those experts. During the time they had been fleeing, Qin Feng had already memorized the terrain of this place. He knew which places had spirit beasts, how many spirit beasts there were, and how strong they were. He also told them to pay attention when they moved. If possible, they could invite their spirit beasts to help. A scene of the prey killing the hunter was slowly playing out in this forest. In a forest, A soldier was leading 7 or 8 servants to search for Qin Feng and the others. Motherf ***, these smelly rats really know how to hide. The soldier cursed as he killed an early-stage first-rank spirit beast that had rushed up. This was already the 3rd wave of attacks from the spirit beast. Even though there were no casualties, they had caused quite a lot of trouble. At the very least, he had not encountered any prey so far. It was as if these people had evaporated into thin air. My lord, if we go deeper, we may encounter some powerful spirit beasts. A person beside him walked up and reminded him. Fine, let's go back for now. I don't think these people will be able to escape. The warrior nodded. Although he was conceited, he also cherished his life. There was no need for him to fight so hard. Swish, swish, swish. However, just as they were about to return, numerous arrows were shot from the surrounding forest. Immediately, several people were hit by the arrows and died screaming. Who the ***ck is blind? Can't you see that he's one of us? The warrior cursed angrily. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his expression suddenly changed. His pupils shrank as he looked in front of him. Qin Feng was wearing a battle suit and holding a long spear. He walked out of the forest and looked at him indifferently. It's you. The warrior was stunned. He immediately recognized Qin Feng. He glanced at Qin Feng and his pupils shrank. You killed our people. You're the 3rd. Qin Feng pointed his spear at the warrior and said indifferently. That warrior stared fixedly at Qin Feng. In the next instant, he abruptly retreated and shouted, Quickly retreat! Spread the news! Swish, swish, swish. However, before they could leave, more than 10 people rushed out from the surrounding forest. They were holding shining swords and spears in their hands. They stared at them with murderous intent. Those people felt a chill in their hearts. Those were the weapons of their companions. Now that they had fallen into the hands of these people, it was obvious that their companions had been killed. You dare to kill us? The warrior stared at Qin Feng. However, when he saw his cold eyes, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. You're Qin Feng, right? Let's calm down. As long as you let me go, I promise I'll let you all leave here alive. The warrior was afraid and lowered his posture. However, a cold light flashed in his eyes. They had always been the ones chasing and killing runaway slaves. Some runaway slaves were stronger than them, but they didn't dare to fight with them. However, now they encountered a group of runaway slaves who didn't care about their lives. They actually wanted to kill all of them. Qin Feng stared at him coldly. The corner of his mouth twitched. He quickly rushed to the warrior and threw his spear. Then, he raised his fist and punched at the warrior. Qin Feng, you should know the consequences of killing young Master Jin. Because of fear, the warrior's voice was sharp. However, Qin Feng was unmoved. After the warrior dodged the spear, he punched and sent him flying. Qin Feng didn't dare to be careless when dealing with people who had experienced the battlefield. He punched again and again. At the same time, the others also moved. They had been suppressing their resentment for too long. They needed to explode. When the 5th punch was thrown, the warrior fell to the ground and vomited blood. All the bones in his body were broken by Qin Feng. He was dead. In fact, with his many years of combat experience, he could fight a few rounds with Qin Feng. However, when he knew that several groups of people had been killed by Qin Feng, he was afraid and only wanted to escape. Therefore, from the beginning, Qin Feng had the upper hand and he couldn't form an effective resistance. This was also the reason why Qin Feng let them take the other party's weapons. It was easier to defeat them on a spiritual level. Just wait for the bloody revenge of the imperial capital. He knew that he couldn't live anymore. He stared at Qin Feng with hatred. Don't worry. No one will know about this. Qin Feng looked down at him with a cold smile. None of these people who went up the mountain will live. Everyone was careless. When Qin Feng's palm slammed down, a voice filled with infinite fear and regret sounded in his heart. In the end, his eyes completely dimmed. The third warrior was obliterated. At the same time, the others he brought were all killed. After moving a little, the feeling of relaxation made Qin Feng's killing intent continue to grow in his heart. It's time to launch the final counterattack. A group of people gathered together. After an afternoon of guerrilla warfare, they eliminated more than half of the enemy's forces. In terms of numbers, both sides were almost equal. In terms of strength, they had a certain advantage. Is everyone ready? Don't worry. This time, they won't be able to return. Chapter 85. Annihilation. In a spacious area, several tents were set up. In the middle of them was a slightly luxurious tent. There were 7 or 8 people inside, their faces gloomy. The atmosphere was incomparably heavy. We've lost contact with more than half of them. Who can tell me what happened? Young Master Jean said in a deep voice. Don't tell me that it was done by those slaves. Young Master, it seems that we've underestimated those slaves. An elder stood up and said respectfully. For safety reasons, we need to leave this place and find reinforcements outside. Being scared off by a bunch of slaves, where do you want me to put my face? Young Master Jean roared, his eyes spitting fire. Young Master, we don't need to bother with these lowly slaves. Your status is noble, your safety comes first. The elder said respectfully. He was one of the few experts here, having reached the peak of the late sea opening stage. Hearing this, young Master Jin's eyes flickered. With a gloomy voice he said, Send people down to get reinforcements. Even if we have to flip over this mountain, we need to find all of them. Night fell, and all living things fell asleep. The entire world seemed to have quieted down. Bright moonlight poured down, covering the mountain with a layer of silver, giving it a mysterious feeling. In the darkness, the entire camp was quiet. Only the bonfires emitted a weak light, swaying with the wind, as if dancing. Without the illumination of the sun, the entire mountain forest seemed even colder and darker. A silver moon hung high in the sky. The branches of the luxuriant leaves were illuminated by the bright moonlight, making them look like ferocious beasts baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. At some unknown time, dust suddenly rose in the quiet surroundings of the camp, and the earth trembled slightly. However, it was extremely faint and difficult to detect. As time passed, the trembling became more obvious. The earth trembled, and an indescribable fiendish aura quietly attacked the camp that was practically defenseless. Rumble. An extremely fiendish aura, along with a strong smell of blood, attacked the camp that was completely defenseless. Beast attack. Quickly get up, there's a beast attack. When the dispirited sentinel regained his senses, the earth began to tremble violently. A rather dense fiendish aura enveloped him. In the darkness, it was hard to see how many spirit beasts there were, but the roars of the beasts shook the earth. The faces of the sentries turned pale. Rumble! The spirit beast army rushed over like a torrent. Before the sentries could react, they were drowned by the beast tide, and only a few screams could be heard. What's going on? When young Master Jean and company opened the tent and saw the densely packed, desolate beasts, their faces turned green. Quick, protect the young master and leave. The old man rushed forward and stood in front of the spirit beasts. Immediately, a few people surrounded young Master Jean and rushed out to kill. Although there were many spirit beasts, their strength was low. The people protecting young Master Jean were all expert. Gradually, they killed their way out of the siege. The group of people walked around the mountain, fighting with spirit beasts from time to time. At daybreak, they finally found the way down the mountain and ran all the way down. Mobilize the army and raze this place to the ground. Nearly 100 people went up the mountain, but in the end, only a dozen people escaped. Many of them were injured. Young Master Jean was trembling with anger. His eyes were red. He had never been humiliated like this before. They quickly rushed to the place where they tied their horses and rode away. Shio, however, not long after they ran, there were countless sounds of wind breaking in the surrounding forest. Sharp arrows shot out like black poisonous snakes, enveloping young Master Jean and company. Immediately, someone fell off his horse and screamed. The attack was too sudden. When they thought it was safe and let down their guard, the sudden attack broke out. Most people did not have time to dodge and fell to the ground. Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion. Young Master Jean only saw a blur in front of his eyes. Immediately, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. His whole body flew out and landed heavily on the ground. "It's you." Young Master Jean quickly got up. When he saw the person who attacked him, his eyes widened in anger. At the same time, his spirit energy surged quickly to protect his body. Qin Feng stood not far from him and looked at him coldly. "Is this all you're doing?" Young Master Jin's eyes were about to spit fire. A group of people were all killed by a group of escaped slaves that he could pinch to death with one hand. This made him very angry. He had never been defeated and humiliated like this before. "Humph, you think you can kill me?" Young Master Jean coldly shouted. He had always thought that he was being held hostage because he was careless. Qin Feng sneered at him with disdain in his eyes. "Kill!" Qin Feng's disdain stimulated the anger that he had been suppressing. He shouted, and his whole body was covered in golden light. He punched out, golden light gushing out. Qin Feng chuckled. He gathered his strength on his fist and punched out, shaking the air. Boom! The two fists collided, and the air exploded. The two figures retreated at the same time. "Your strength." Young Master Jean took a deep breath. He had fought with Qin Feng before. When he held back his strength, he was able to occupy the upper hand. But now, when he used his full strength, they were evenly matched. "You were hiding your strength before?" Young Master Jean felt a chill in his heart. This kind of escaped slave was too terrifying. Qin Feng didn't waste any words with him. He punched out again and again, each fist containing an incomparably berserk strength. The air was constantly exploding with energy, especially when the two of them exchanged blows. Space surged, astral winds rampaged. The two of them quickly moved through the flying sand and stones. Their fierce exchange caused the trees and rocks in the forest to explode. The shock waves from their exchange shattered everything in their path. "You really do have some strength." Qin Feng nodded. Although this young Master Jean was annoying, his strength was indisputable. He could be considered a powerful expert. Especially that golden spiritual energy, it was boundlessly overbearing. An ordinary mid-sea expansion expert really wasn't his match. He even had the power to fight against a late-stage sea expansion expert. "Kill!" Qin Feng's evaluation made young Master Jean feel even more humiliated. He roared, and his spiritual energy erupted. Golden light formed ripples that spread out. "Good!" Qin Feng roared, circulating his physical strength and using the Fist King's 3 tyrants. His fists flickered, and his strength suddenly skyrocketed. It directly caused the air to explode, and the ripples that spread out were dispersed. Young Master Jean was horrified. He turned and fled. This escaped slave was stronger than he had imagined. He was definitely faking it to subdue him. Seeing young Master Jean trying to escape, Qin Feng sneered. His foot cracked the ground, and his figure was like lightning. He caught up with him in an instant and punched out again. "You're going too far!" Young Master Jean roared. He circulated all the strength in his body and punched back. Pung! He was sent flying. He wasn't Qin Feng's opponent. The two exchanged dozens of blows. Qin Feng punched him in the chest, sending him flying again. He coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. He was seriously injured. "Xiao!" Qin Feng was just about to close in when his hair stood on end. He instinctively moved half a meter to the side. A golden light shot past him, and a giant tree in the distance exploded. Looking at the bronze mirror in young Master Jin's hand, Qin Feng's eyes shone brightly. This was definitely a secret treasure with great destructive power. He raised his left hand, and a water snake shot out, knocking the bronze mirror away. At the same time, he kicked him away, breaking a few of his ribs. Young Master Jin lay on the ground, blood spurting out of his mouth. He stared at Qin Feng with hatred. His heart was dead. He knew that he couldn't escape today. Ha! Don't think that you'll be safe after killing me. Let me tell you, I've already sent people to inform everyone about the situation here. Just you wait. Not only will you slaves die, but your whole family will be exterminated. Young Master Jin laughed crazily. Are you talking about this? Qin Feng took out a token from his bosom and threw it to young Master Jin's side with a mocking expression. Looking at that familiar token, young Master Jin's heart was dead. He said with difficulty, "How cunning, how ruthless! From the moment you chased me up the mountain, the result was already decided." Qin Feng said coldly. He chopped off Jin Si's head. As for the bronze mirror, he didn't dare to take it. He was worried that young Master Jin's family would find out. Chapter 86. Rescue. After dealing with young Master Jin and the others, they searched the mountain again until they were sure that no one had escaped before stopping. The group of people felt incomparably carefree as they lay on the ground and laughed. This kind of feat was simply too satisfying. No one would dare to believe it if they told it to others. They had actually killed all the noble family disciples who had bullied them. Since ancient times, how many people had dared to do so? And all of this was done by that young man, and they had not suffered any casualties. Some people looked at Qin Feng with eyes that revealed a hint of admiration for the first time. This was not admiration brought by strength, but a kind of admiration that came from the bottom of their hearts. This kind of method, this kind of temperament, this kind of courage and boldness, was worthy of everyone's admiration. The few of them rested for a while, and did not dare to stay any longer. They hurriedly left, and only when they had run for more than 10 li did they breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. He stood at a high vantage point and stared at the forest far away. There was a spacious area where a huge azure wolf was leaping about. On its back, there was a soldier clad in armor. The soldier held a long spear in his hand and roared in anger, thrusting it forward. Wolf Rider. Qin Feng and Ouyang she looked at each other and saw a thick trace of seriousness in each other's eyes. Wolf Rider was the imperial capital's most elite army. They could be called a legend in the army. Every one of them had powerful strength, and the weakest was at the sea-opening realm. Wolf Rider was the army's treasure. They were not ordered by any general, and only listened to the imperial capital's emperor. In the past, the Wolf Knights had made illustrious contributions in defending their territory and expanding their territory against the beasts. Their reputation had been earned by killing their way to victory. Every one of them was a hot-blooded man who had fought in all directions. When the Wolf Rider was mentioned, it was unavoidable that people would feel respect. A legend in the army, this was enough to show the strength of the Wolf Rider. It was so strong that it was accurate to say that it was strong to everyone. Roar. Under their gazes, the giant azure wolf roared towards the sky. Wolf Rider roared loudly, and the surrounding rocks and trees all exploded. The long spear in his hand pierced out, and a dazzling light burst out. Suddenly, a huge claw emerged from the dense forest. It was covered in black scales, and it slammed towards him. Boom! The spear tip heavily struck the giant black claw, and the scene seemed to freeze for a moment. The scene that followed made Qin Feng and the others feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and they stood there in a daze. The long spear was broken, and the Wolf Rider's body was covered with cracks. Then it exploded. The giant green wolf below him roared, and in an instant it was torn to pieces. The bloody light that filled the sky slowly eroded the nerves of Qin Feng and the others, causing their heads to feel like they were about to explode. How was this possible? A powerful wolf rider was actually blown apart in the air. This was hard for many people to accept. That was the wolf rider. How could it be so easily smashed into pieces? There are rank 3 spirit beasts in this forest? Everyone couldn't help but tremble. There was actually such a terrifying spirit beast hidden in the forest that they had fled from. Quick, let's get out of here. Everyone was trembling in fear. Qin Feng didn't dare to stay any longer. He led a group of people to hide far away. To be able to smash the wolf rider with one claw, it had to be at least a rank 3 spirit beast, which was comparable to a bone-strengthening stage expert. In the end, they found a cave covered by vines under a cliff. Everyone hid in it, and they were all pale with fright. A rank 3 spirit beast was absolutely a devastating disaster for them. Qin Feng left with the excuse of going out to scout the terrain. He ordered them not to go out until he returned. After arriving outside, Qin Feng identified the direction and ran towards the Wolf Knight's battle. The Wolf Rider was a special kind of soldier in the army. Only the royal family could mobilize it, and it was rarely used in general battles. This time, the major families in the capital had sent their disciples out to gain experience, but there was no Wolf Rider to protect them. However, there was one here. According to Qin Feng's speculation, there was only one possibility. An extremely noble person had come here and needed the Wolf Rider's protection. And to be able to receive such treatment, the person's identity was absolutely frightening. At least, it was not comparable to people like young Master Jin. Qin Feng had his own plans. This important person was obviously in danger. If he could save him, he could make the other party feel grateful. Of course, he wouldn't act rashly. He needed to observe on the spot. If he felt it was possible, he didn't mind saving them. If not, he would wait until they were buried in the belly of the beast and see if he could make a profit. Anyway, for him, if he didn't make a fortune, he would make the other party owe him a favor. Why wouldn't he do this kind of thing that was beneficial without any harm? However, it was not without danger. After all, there was a rank 3 spirit beast. If he was careless, he wouldn't be able to come back. Qin Feng was a person who dared to take risks. Sometimes, he would stubbornly go to a dead end. As long as he thought that the benefits of this matter outweighed the danger, he would definitely do it. As he slowly approached the location, he also deeply experienced the strength of a rank 3 spirit beast. Just the pressure alone was enough to oppress people. In a forest, a group of people retreated with pale faces. In the middle of the crowd, there was a young girl wearing a golden dress and a phoenix hairpin in her hair. Her face was emitting a noble aura. Behind her, there were 3 Wolf Rider charging. Soon, Qin Feng approached the place. He hid in a huge tree in the distance and observed the situation. Hiss! When he saw the scene here, he immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. So tragic. His face became serious. Too many people had died in this area. At least 100 people had died. Many of them didn't even have a complete corpse. It was too tragic. A strong smell of blood pervaded the air. There was a huge green wolf that was trampled into meat paste. There was also a wolf rider that was impaled by his own spear and nailed to the ground. His blood dyed the ground red. Just by identifying their identities, Qin Feng saw at least 4 wolf riders fall here. 4 wolf rider had died, and there was still one who was bitterly holding on. What shocked Qin Feng was that this wolf rider's mount was actually a huge wolf covered in purple fur. Purple Wolf Knight. He was shocked. A wolf rider was divided into 3 ranks: green, purple, and white. The different ranks also represented the different ranks of the wolf rider. There was actually a purple wolf knight here. How could he not be shocked? Because according to the ranking system, a purple wolf knight was generally at the strengthened bone stage. And even such a wolf rider was forced into a dead end. One could imagine how terrifying this spirit beast was. Qin Feng suddenly felt that he was wrong to come here to try his luck. Qin Feng's gaze moved and finally stopped at the young girl who was protected in the center. She must be that noble person. Could it be the 9th princess? Qin Feng was surprised. The emperor of the imperial capital was said to be the direct descendant of that god. He had 8 sons, but only one daughter was born when he was 40 years old. Because of this, he doted on her very much. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was doted on by thousands. If she went out, it would be reasonable to have the Purple Wolf Knight as her escort. Qin Feng nodded. Whether or not she was the 9th princess, since she was a woman, it should be easy to talk to her. He made a decision. No, it's not that spirit beast. Chapter 87. Making a move. It was a spirit beast that looked like a crocodile, but it could stand upright. There was a white horn on its head, and its body was covered in green scales. It was definitely not the spirit beast they had seen before. This crocodile spirit beast was very fierce. It forced the wolf rider to retreat continuously, coughing up large amounts of blood. However, it was also heavily injured. There were several deep wounds on its back that exposed the bone. One of its claws had been torn off, and blood was flowing out. There was also a long spear stuck in its abdomen. Clearly, this crocodile spirit beast was not inferior to the 4-wolf rider. It was also heavily injured, and its battle strength was greatly reduced. This wolf rider should be able to hold on for a while longer. Qin Feng muttered. His eyes flickered for a moment, and he decisively left, following the traces of the battle. Soon, he found a huge spirit beast that had died here. It was a tiger-shaped spirit beast that had definitely reached the 3rd rank. You really let me off easy. Qin Feng grinned. He hurriedly rushed over and devoured its blood chi. When he found that the crocodile spirit beast was not the same spirit beast as before, he guessed that the spirit beast that killed the wolf rider with one claw was already heavily injured, or even dead. The higher the rank of a spirit beast, the more vigorous its blood. He could not waste it, so he really did find it along the way. After devouring the blood of the 3rd-rank spirit beast, Qin Feng felt a faint swelling pain in his chi. He knew that his spirit energy was about to reach the peak. He was only one step away from breaking through to the middle stage of the Pioneer Sea realm. He quickly returned, just in time for the Purple Wolf Rider to launch a desperate attack. I'll wait for the Wolf Rider to heavily injure it again. Then I'll make my move. Boom. Sure enough, just as he finished speaking, the Wolf Rider roared. The giant purple wolf jumped up high, and the Wolf Rider stood upright. Light blossomed from its body, and like a god descending to the mortal world, it launched a peerless attack. Bang! The crocodile spirit beast was heavily injured. Its torn claws were pierced and broken, and the broken spear shot into the crocodile spirit beast's chest. With this strike, Wolf Rider's aura quickly weakened. The crocodile spirit beast roared angrily and slapped the Wolf Rider with its paw. Then, the Wolf Rider was smashed into pieces. The Purple Wolf Rider was also turned into a pile of meat paste. When the last Wolf Rider fell, the group of people in the mountains trembled in fear. Even the pretty face of the 9th princess turned pale. The crocodile spirit beast growled and stared at the 9th princess and the others with its big, blood-red eyes that were as big as fists. Its whole body exuded a fierce and violent aura. It strode towards the 9th princess and the others, causing the earth to tremble. A few people braced themselves and walked out, blocking the way. Bang! The crocodile spirit beast swung its claw and sent them flying. A rank 3 spirit beast was still a rank 3 spirit beast. Even if it was heavily injured, it wasn't something that ordinary sea expansion cultivators could resist. The crocodile spirit beast opened its bloody mouth and looked extremely ferocious. It stretched out its claw and grabbed at the 9th princess and the others. The surrounding people turned pale. They were all the guards and maids of the ninth princess. If anything happened to the ninth princess, their whole family wouldn't be enough. The ninth princess also seemed to be frightened. She stared blankly at the bloody claw. There was no doubt that if she was hit, she would die. Her delicate little face couldn't help but turn pale. Only now did the ninth princess, who had been doted on by everyone and had never suffered any hardship or grievance, finally know what fear felt like. Faced with this attack that was almost certain to kill her, the ninth princess also gave up on meaningless hope. Her beautiful eyes slowly closed, and a heart-wrenching mournful expression appeared on her cold and beautiful face. However, just when everyone thought that this delicate flower was about to be brutally and bloodily destroyed, suddenly, a sharp sound broke through the air. A black shadow like a black lightning cut through the void. Boom! The air exploded as the crocodile spirit beast's claw finally landed. The ground instantly cracked and a large pit appeared. The imagined scene of blood splattering everywhere did not appear. Not far away, the guards and maids of the ninth princess could not help but be stunned. Immediately, they hurriedly shifted their gazes, only to see a black shadow flashing and appearing dozens of meters away. The ninth princess was lying limply in his arms, as if she had been frightened out of her wits. The black shadow lowered his head and looked at the originally delicate and moving face in his arms. However, due to the paleness, her beautiful face appeared even more lovely and moving. Although his arm was wrapped around her soft and slender waist, under the gazes of the people nearby, he couldn't do anything. He could only straighten her body and gently smile. "Are you all right?" Hearing the voice, the ninth princess's tightly shut long eyelashes trembled a few times. Immediately, she opened her eyes in shock. When her gaze saw the delicate and handsome young face that appeared in front of her, she was suddenly startled. After saving the ninth princess, Qin Feng's figure flashed and disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already at the crocodile spirit beast's head. His mental power swept out and rushed into the spirit beast's mind, stirring it up desperately. The spirit beast roared angrily. It hit its head with all its might. Qin Feng's mental power moved his body and arrived at the crocodile spirit beast's chest. There was a broken spear there, and more than half of it was buried in its chest. Qin Feng channeled his power and punched the spear, driving it into the crocodile spirit beast's heart. The spirit beast struggled for a few moments before its huge body fell to the ground with a loud crash. Qin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had observed clearly before. The Purple Wolf Knight's last attack had hit the crocodile spirit beast's heart. It was just that its power was not enough and it did not pierce through. Qin Feng took advantage of the situation and used his mental power to interfere. Then, he drove the spear into the crocodile spirit beast's heart and killed it. After killing the crocodile spirit beast, Qin Feng did not dare to delay. He hurriedly devoured its blood and qi. His 100-calamity heaven-devouring technique had improved when he was besieged by spirit beasts that night. As long as the spirit beast had not died for a long time, he could devour it. The blood and qi of the crocodile spirit beast was even more powerful than that of the tiger-shaped spirit beast. Qin Feng was almost about to enter the middle stage of the Pioneer Sea realm, but he suppressed it. The whole place was dead silent. Pairs of eyes first stared at the huge spirit beast, then finally landed on Qin Feng's body. Their gazes slowly became sluggish. The ninth princess pushed through the crowd and walked over. Her big eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at Qin Feng and asked, "Are you an escaped slave? What do you think?" Looking at the naive face of the ninth princess, Qin Feng knew that she must be a little girl who had not experienced the world. She should be easy to fool. He quickly said, "This spirit beast is already dead. You are safe. But you are an escaped slave. Why did you save me?" "I came here to kill an escaped slave," the ninth princess asked with her eyes wide open. "There is no difference in the value of human life. You are human, and the escaped slave is also human. Qin Feng shook his head and made a profound expression. Even if I know you will still kill me, I can't just watch as a fresh life is lost without doing anything. If you want to kill me, then come. But I won't let you capture me without a fight. Chapter 88. The Ninth Princess. In a secluded mountain forest, Qin Feng was sitting on a clean rock, circulating the 100 calamity heaven swallowing art to further refine the blood chi of the 2/3 rank spirit beast. He hoped to break through to the mid-sea expansion realm, but in the end, he failed. He was only half a step away from that step, but it was still difficult to cross. Not far away, gazes filled with killing intent shot over. Princess, this person is a runaway slave. We must kill him, said a soldier. The Ninth Princess ignored him and walked over to Qin Feng, looking at him curiously. Sit. Qin Feng didn't open his eyes as he spoke indifferently. The Ninth Princess was stunned. She clenched her teeth and angrily glared at Qin Feng. Then she sat on a clean rock. It was fine if this fellow didn't let her sit, but he was actually so cold. Did he not know the difference between the two of them? Although he had saved her life. Turning her head, she saw that Qin Feng's eyes were still closed. The Ninth Princess was a bit angry, but considering that he had saved her, she amiably asked, Hey, what's your name? The Ninth Princess' voice was lively, with a trace of childishness. It was very pleasant to hear. Qin Feng raised an eyebrow, thinking. He already knew that this was indeed the Ninth Princess. With her status, there was no lack of flattering lackeys by her side. If he wanted her to remember him, he had to act a bit differently. So he indifferently said, A name is just a form of address. The Ninth Princess couldn't bear hearing this. How could this person be like this? Just because he had saved her, he dared to take credit for himself and be so rude to her? Do you know that I can punish you for being so rude? Or do you think that because you saved me, I won't dare to do such a thing? The Ninth Princess said, her sparkling face angry. Because of her childishness, she seemed to be baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. It was kind of cute. Qin Feng opened his eyes and glanced at her. He said softly, In order to save you, I was injured and am now recuperating. What else do you want me to do to you? If you didn't come over to disturb me, how could I be rude to you? The Ninth Princess was stunned when she heard that. She looked at Qin Feng blankly. No one had ever dared to talk to her like that. She was not used to it. He was so stunned that he didn't know how to refute. Hey, you're a runaway slave. How can you talk to me like that? After a long time, she still felt that it was better to use her identity. She looked at Qin Feng proudly, only to find that after her voice fell, this guy actually frowned and looked very dissatisfied. I've never considered myself a fugitive slave. Qin Feng's tone was cold, but he was a little happy in his heart. Sure enough, those nobles with power liked to be snubbed. The colder you were, the more curious the other party would be. Hearing the coldness in Qin Feng's voice, the Ninth Princess was stunned. She said subconsciously, But you're a fugitive slave. You don't want to admit it because you don't dare to face reality. Reality? Ha ha. Qin Feng chuckled when he heard that. His voice was full of mockery. What is reality? We're born slaves? You're born noble? Isn't that so? The Ninth Princess retorted. I'm from the imperial capital. I'm a descendant of God. God's blood flows in my body. You're a sinner's remnant. You have sinner's blood flowing in your body. Ha ha. Qin Feng couldn't help but sneer when he heard that. He said mockingly, The status of people may be divided into different classes, but the blood flowing in our bodies is the same. Our blood is red. There's no difference. Our status is low, but it doesn't mean that we're born to be slaves. Think about it. Other than being from the imperial capital, what else do you have more than us? The Ninth Princess was stunned by Qin Feng's question. She didn't know how to refute it. Thinking about it carefully, they really didn't have anything more than those slaves. However, she grew up in the palace and was deeply influenced by the slavery system. Naturally, she couldn't agree with Qin Feng's idea. She retorted in a low voice, "We're noble because we're the descendants of God. This is undeniable." Her voice was very soft, and she felt a little guilty, because she only knew that the people from the imperial capital were noble and enslaved everyone else, but she didn't know why they had this qualification. Qin Feng chuckled and didn't say anything. The ninth princess couldn't help but pout when she saw this. She was very dissatisfied. "Hey, I'm the ninth princess. Don't you know how much benefit it will bring you if you curry favor with me?" She raised her snow-white chin and said proudly, "I've never saved you because of your identity. It's because you're a human life." Qin Feng went against his conscience. The ninth princess was completely stunned. Her big eyes blinked. She really couldn't see through Qin Feng. He was different from those people who only cared about pleasing her. He was also different from those slaves. She believed that if there was a chance to curry favor with her, not to mention those low-status slaves, even the disciples of aristocratic families and the royal family would spare no effort to seize this opportunity. But now that she had opened her mouth and given this opportunity, this guy couldn't even be bothered to pay attention to her. This made her feel frustrated for the first time. "You really don't know how to seize opportunities," the ninth princess said angrily. Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. He didn't say anything. After being ignored by Qin Feng time and time again, the anger in the ninth princess' heart gradually disappeared. Instead, she became more curious. This escaped slave who was different from others made her very interested. He was completely different from those who only knew how to curry favor with her and flatter her. Or perhaps, in that kind of environment, she knew that it was very difficult to hear a few words of truth. "Hey, come with me to the palace. Isn't being a guard with a sword better than being an escaped slave outside?" the ninth princess said. Qin Feng shook his head and said with a smile, "What's the difference? It's just jumping from one cage to another." "Hey, what do you mean? You said the palace is a cage." The ninth princess was dissatisfied. No one dared to criticize the palace like this. She said coldly, "Don't forget, you're just an escaped slave. Being able to enter the palace and not be enslaved, isn't that the best ending for escaped slaves like you?" Qin Feng glanced at her and shook his head with a smile. He didn't say anything. To be honest, a moment ago, he was indeed a bit tempted. However, when he thought of the determination and fighting spirit of those slaves who had risked their lives to enter the Holy Dragon Institute and change their own fate and the fate of all the enslaved people, he quickly dispelled this idea. Ouyang Qingtian was right. All living beings were slaves. The prosperity of a family was insignificant. It wasn't wrong to be judged as a slave. It was wrong to be willing to be manipulated by fate and not dare to resist. If he entered the palace, he could indeed make the Qin family rise. But then, he would never be able to get rid of the mark of a slave. It wasn't shameful to be poor. It was shameful to give up the moral bottom line for glory and wealth. When they were willing to be escaped slaves and bear the shameful crime, they were destined not to live for themselves, but for the thousands of people who were still struggling in the sea of suffering. This was their responsibility and belief. Without responsibility and belief, could they still be called human? They were just walking corpses under the control of others. "What's with that look? Don't look at me sideways," the ninth princess warned. Qin Feng shrugged. "Hey, you don't even want my benefits. What do you want?" the ninth princess asked. "What I want is something you can't give me," Qin Feng said lightly. "Tsk." The ninth princess curled her lips and said, "Don't forget your identity. Don't have too much ambition. Otherwise, you will be disappointed. It's better to be a noble than a general." Qin Feng shook his head gently and looked directly at the ninth princess. He whispered, "I want this system without human rights to disappear completely. One day, I will make you, the descendants of the so-called gods, worship me. The ninth princess looked at him blankly. After a long time, she came back to her senses. She looked at Qin Feng speechlessly and said, "Your ambition is not small. However, you are destined to be disappointed. Some things can't be done with determination. Many people have tried to do this, but they have never succeeded. Because the strength of one person can't change anything. How can the ancestral system that has been passed down for thousands of years be changed by the strength of one person? Perhaps." Qin Feng smiled and stood up. He said, "It's about time. In order to avoid awkwardness, let's go our separate ways. When we meet in the future, you don't have to show mercy to me, Qin Feng." "You are Qin Feng?" Qin Feng smiled in his heart. Since he had achieved his goal, it was time to leave. Chapter 89. Seventh Uncle. A terrifying aura suddenly descended. It was too sudden. Qin Feng retreated, leaving a few deep footprints on the ground. He was barely able to resist this pressure. His face turned ugly. This kind of power was too terrifying. It was not something that anyone here could resist. Huh! He suddenly realized that the ninth princess and the others were standing there unharmed. It seemed that they were not affected at all. Qin Feng's eyelids twitched as he looked around. He instantly understood that the experts of the imperial capital had come. Bang! A slight sound came from the sky. A figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Humph! The ninth princess is not someone a despicable slave like you can blaspheme. A thunderous voice exploded in Qin Feng's ears. His face suddenly turned pale. He staggered back, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. "Kneel!" That person shouted loudly. Qin Feng was in a trance. A terrifying voice with a strong penetrating power made his head ache. He felt as if his head was about to explode. Blood flowed from his ears. Qin Feng knelt on one knee with a bang. His bones trembled. He could not bear it and almost knelt down. "Seventh Uncle." The ninth princess was overjoyed. But soon her face changed color. She anxiously said, "Seventh Uncle, what are you doing? Quickly stop." "Princess, this despicable slave dared to blaspheme you. Today I will skin him alive," Seventh Uncle said. The pressure was getting heavier. Qin Feng felt as though there was a gigantic mountain pressing down on him. His heart felt heavy as his entire body trembled. This level of power simply surpassed his imagination. However, he would not kneel down easily. Qin Feng quickly operated the 100 calamity sky swallowing art. He supported himself with both hands and stood up little by little. Every inch of height consumed a lot of his strength. In the end, he even felt dizzy. Seventh Uncle was surprised when he saw this. He shouted, "Kneel down!" Boundless spiritual pressure suddenly rushed towards Qin Feng like a tidal wave, swallowing him whole. Qin Feng's body trembled violently, but he still held on with all his might. Furthermore, his body was still growing. Finally, he stood up, his body as straight as a spear. When Seventh Uncle saw this, a ruthless look flashed across his eyes. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Poochie!" Qin Feng immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His ears were bleeding, and his bones were cracking. His flesh and blood began to convulse. Beads of blood seeped out of his pores, and in just a few breaths, his whole body was soaked. Crack! There was the sound of bones breaking. Qin Feng staggered backwards, but he still stubbornly held on. Everything below his calf had sunk into the ground. "Seventh Uncle, stop!" Seeing this, the ninth princess hurriedly stood in front of Qin Feng and her delicate body shook. "Princess!" When Seventh Uncle saw this, he was so scared that he quickly withdrew his pressure and slapped himself hard. "Princess, please forgive me. I deserve to die." The ninth princess's face was slightly pale. She glanced at him and supported Qin Feng. Her pretty face was full of worry. "How are you?" "I'm fine." Qin Feng waved his hand. "Why are you so stubborn? How can you withstand seventh uncle's pressure?" Looking at Qin Feng's pale face, the ninth princess rebuked him. Hearing this, Qin Feng smiled slightly, but his voice was incomparably firm. "I, Qin Feng, will not kneel to the heavens or the earth. I will only kneel to my parents. How can I kneel to others?" The ninth princess was speechless. "You are going to die. Why are you still so arrogant?" She took out an elixir and put it into Qin Feng's mouth. Looking at the two intimate people, seventh uncle immediately glared at them and was about to attack. The ninth princess glared at him with her big eyes. She was already angry. "Back off 10 meters. No, 20 meters. If you dare to take another step, I will tell my father that you did not protect him well." Hearing this, seventh uncle fiercely glared at Qin Feng and unwillingly retreated 20 meters. However, his eyes were fixed on Qin Feng. If Qin Feng dared to do anything blasphemous, he would kill him on the spot even at the risk of being punished. "Why don't you try to glare at me again?" The ninth princess angrily glared at seventh uncle and bared her teeth. Knowing that the ninth princess was really angry this time, seventh uncle's body trembled and he quickly lowered his head. However, he still said, "Princess, you are a noble. How can you let a runaway slave touch you? This is blasphemy to the dignity of the royal family." Hearing this, the ninth princess was speechless. "What time is it? Why are you still so particular? The dignity of the royal family is not to be blasphemed at any time," seventh uncle stubbornly said. The older one was so stubborn and the younger one was also so stubborn. The ninth princess rubbed her forehead and helplessly said, "Fine. You said that the royal family is dignified. Then I will tell you. When I was almost eaten by that spiritual beast, where were you at that time? An empire's princess almost died in the mouth of a spiritual beast. Who will bear the responsibility of losing her dignity?" This. Seventh uncle's voice faltered. He muttered in his heart. "Wasn't it because you wanted to train yourself and didn't want me to protect you?" He said, "Wolf Rider did not protect you well. He should be punished." The ninth princess glanced at him and said, "At that time, he saved me from the spiritual beast. He is my benefactor." "What? Princess, your body is priceless. How can you be indebted to a runaway slave?" Seventh uncle had just finished speaking when his expression suddenly changed. He looked at Qin Feng and said, He killed a third-rank spiritual beast? How can it be fake?" The ninth princess said unhappily, "How is that possible?" Seventh uncle did not believe it. His eyes were filled with contempt. With his strength, he could naturally see Qin Feng's depth. He was at the early stage of sea expansion. It should be Wolf Rider who risked his life to injure him. He took advantage of it. Even so, I can't deny that without him, I wouldn't be standing in front of you right now. The ninth princess curled her lips and said, "He was injured by you and needs to be brought back to the palace to recuperate." "How can that be? He is a runaway slave. He is destined to be killed," seventh uncle said. "Is this how we treat our benefactor in the imperial capital?" Seventh uncle was stunned. Soon after, he stubbornly said, "Since he is a runaway slave, he must die. However, we will compensate his family appropriately." "What if I don't allow you to kill him? If you insist on bringing him back to the palace?" the ninth princess said with a slightly stunned expression. Before seventh uncle could say anything, Qin Feng said, "I can't go back to the palace with you. He is right. I am a runaway slave, so I am your enemy. However, even if I die, I will die a heroic death in battle." "You have courage. I will let you die quickly." Seventh uncle's heart turned cold. Looking at the ninth princess's cold little face, he changed his words and said, "I am too lazy to do anything. With your strength, you will be killed before reaching the St. Ryu Inn. Princess, we should go back. The 9th princess was about to speak when Qin Feng interrupted her. He said, let's go. If we continue to be in a deadlock, I will only die faster. I already said that you don't owe me anything. When we meet again in the future, there is no need to show mercy. Qin Feng said as he turned around and left. There was a faint smile on his face. From how the 9th princess protected him, she should be a person who knew how to be grateful. The more he said that they didn't owe each other, the more she wanted to return the favor. Chapter 90. Find the blockade. After a long distance, Qin Feng hurriedly sat down to heal his injuries. Previously, he was oppressed by 7th uncle, causing him to suffer heavy injuries. Activating the 100 Tribulations heaven-devouring incantation, he devoured the spiritual energy around him to heal his injuries. To Qin Feng's surprise, the spirit pill that the 9th princess had given him was truly miraculous. It had actually healed all of his injuries, allowing him to successfully break through to the middle level of the sea opening realm. This is really a pleasant surprise. Qin Feng sighed. As expected of a member of the royal family, a casual move was already extraordinary. Not only did a single spirit pill heal his injuries, but it also allowed him to break through. From this, one could see how high the quality of this spirit pill was. Of course, the main reason he was able to break through was because he was close to the breakthrough point. The pill was only a catalyst. By the time he returned to the cave, it was already nighttime. Several people hurriedly came up to him and asked him what had taken him so long. Qin Feng gave a vague reply and then brought up what they should do next, successfully changing the topic. Right now, we don't know the exact location. Ouyang, she said helplessly. Previously, he was entangled with young Master Jin and fled for a distance. Later on, he was frightened by a rank 3 spirit beast. Now, he didn't even know where he was. Moreover, their original route was remote and there was no specific route, so no one knew where they were now. Now, we can only find the people from the 10 super cities. Otherwise, we won't know how to leave this place, Yumu suggested. Everyone nodded. But we don't know where those people are now. After discussing for a long time, they still could not come up with a good idea. In the end, they decided to split up and explore while looking for the people from the super cities. Under the cover of the moonlight, the group of people split into 3 groups and set off from 3 different directions. They agreed to return here before dawn. Qin Feng, Ouyang Shi, and the others searched for half the night but found nothing. It seems like we've entered the no man's land, Ouyang Shi said. Not to mention the people from the super cities, even the people from the imperial capital couldn't find any trace of them. Forget it. If there is really no other way, we can only take one step at a time, Qin Feng said. The few of them nodded, but their complexions weren't too good. Blindly roaming around the Bald Tail mountain range, where danger lurked in every corner, was very easy to cause a huge problem. After they returned, the other 2 groups of people also returned. Fortunately, one of them brought good news. There's a group that wants to encircle Heavenly Sun City's people? Qin Feng was astonished. This was the news brought back by Yumu and the others. After thinking for a while, Qin Feng asked, "How's the combat strength of this unit?" "Very strong. We also discovered the silhouettes of the Wolf Rider. There are about 5 of them," Yumu said. Hearing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. 5 Wolf Rider. This kind of lineup was enough to eat up Heavenly Sun City's troops? Doesn't Heavenly Sun City have a clear route? How can it be discovered so easily? Ouyang Shi was puzzled. So what if there is a clear route? The Imperial Capital's army has already sealed off all routes leading to St. Ryuin. Yumu shook her head and said helplessly, "It's just easier for them than it is for us. The final battle is unavoidable. What should we do now?" The group looked at Qin Feng, waiting for him to make a decision. After a moment of silence, Qin Feng slowly sighed and said, "We can't avoid this battle. We have to go and reinforce them. But with our strength." At this point, Yu Mu didn't continue. "It's very difficult, right?" Qin Feng shook his head and said, "It might be a coincidence that Heavenly Sun City's people were discovered, or they might have come into contact with the enemy's blockade. If it's the former, it naturally has nothing to do with us, but what if it's the latter? This is a good opportunity. We have a chance to break through the blockade in one go. At that time, Saint Triuin's people will receive us and we'll be safe. So no matter what, we have to go and take a look." Looking at the group, Qin Feng said, "What do you all think?" Yangshi, Xiao Yun, and the others stood beside Qin Feng without hesitation. Yu Mu and the others hesitated for a while, but finally nodded in agreement. "Since that's the case, let's move quickly. Hopefully, we can still make it in time." After discussing for a while, they divided into 3 groups. One group was the main attack group, while the other 2 were the feint group. The main attack group was naturally made up of Qin Feng, Yangshi, and a few others with higher battle strength. After crossing dozens of miles, they quickly noticed the aftermath of the battle. They immediately spread out and slowly advanced. This was a canyon. Shouts of killing shook the sky, and the sounds of swords and blades colliding rang out continuously. Qin Feng looked around and found that not only were Heavenly Sun City's people besieged, but there were also a few others. Looking at their strength, most of them were at the late stage of sea expansion realm. Clearly, they were also from a major city. The 2 groups were separated and each group was besieged by dozens of people. The situation was very dangerous. His gaze continued to move and finally stopped at the entrance of the canyon. There were 2 towering mountains there, like 2 gate gods guarding it. Between the 2 mountains, there was a group of people with powerful auras and sharp killing intent. Wolf Rider. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. There were actually 2 Wolf Rider guarding there. Adding Fushimi and the others besieging them, there were actually 7 Wolf Rider here. Fortunately, they're all Green Wolf Rider. Qin Feng let out a sigh of relief. The upper limit of a Green Wolf Rider was late-stage sea expansion realm. They wouldn't be that strong. 12 soldiers, all ranging from early to mid-stage. After analyzing the battle strength of both sides, Qin Feng said, "There's no need to attack. Let's just feint. Gather everyone and break through the blockade." "Then what about Fushimi and the others?" Yangshi asked. "Once the blockade is broken through, their crisis will be resolved." "How did you know?" Everyone was shocked. "I guessed." Qin Feng smiled. Everyone was speechless. How could this kind of thing be guessed? If he guessed wrong, they would all be finished. In a battle of life and death, opportunities are fleeting. Sometimes, you don't have time to consider whether it's feasible or not. It's decided. Yu Mu, contact the other 2 groups. "We'll break through together," Qin Feng said. Yu Mu smiled bitterly and shook his head. Since he had decided to listen to him, he couldn't refute. "Then let's go all out." Qin Feng shook his head inwardly when he saw that he was ready to die. Soon Yu Mu returned. He had already formed an alliance with the other side. 10 minutes later, they would attack together. Since they had decided to go all out, they didn't delay. Under the cover of the forest, they slowly approached the blockade. Fortunately, the battle was fierce, and the terrain wasn't flat all the way. They finally passed through the battlefield from the side and approached the blockade. "Leave the 2 Wolf Rider to me. After you break through, don't worry about anything and just charge forward," Qin Feng whispered. Seeing that they wanted to object, he said, "It's decided." They looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Yu Mu whispered, "Has he always been so arbitrary?" "No. In the past, he would listen to our opinions," Yangshi said. "But this time..." Yu Mu sighed and said worriedly, "2 late-stage sea expansion Wolf Rider. They won't be easy to deal with. He's taking the danger on himself." Looking at Qin Feng's back, Ouyang, she said, and he never does anything he's not confident in. Perhaps he has a way to deal with two Wolf Rider. After calculating the time, Qin Feng slowly raised his hand and then fiercely swung it down. Chapter 91. Break out. When Qin Feng waved his hand, before anyone could move, his figure had already disappeared. Charge! Ouyang Shi and the others did not dare to delay and rushed out. Kill! The other two groups of people also rushed out. Enemy attack! A group of people suddenly attacked, causing the retired soldiers to be slightly disturbed, but after all, they were well-trained warriors and quickly stabilized their formation. Boom! At this moment, a wolf rider suddenly flew out from the giant wolf. It was too sudden, and before anyone could react, a wolf rider had inexplicably flown out. What's going on? Another wolf rider was shocked. He did not see who made the move. Suddenly, an invisible hand grabbed him, and at the same time, a water snake inexplicably appeared and wrapped around his body. At the same time, a figure appeared beside him, filled with spiritual power, and hit the giant green wolf. That person raised his hand and the wolf rider's head was thrown high into the air. Poochie! After a swing of the blade, that person stretched out his hand and slapped downward. His spiritual power turned into a spear and pierced through the green wolf's head. In the blink of an eye, two wolf rider died and one was injured. This greatly encouraged the people on Ouyang Shi's side. One by one, they rushed up and started a melee with the 12 warriors. Qin Feng finished off a wolf rider and did not stop. He rushed to the second wolf rider. Roar! The green wolf roared, opened its bloody mouth and rushed towards Qin Feng. Get out of my way! Qin Feng shouted, his spiritual power fiercely attacking the green wolf, slowing its movements. He directly attacked the second wolf rider. Whoosh! The wolf rider was experienced in hundreds of battles. His spear pierced through the air, making an explosive sound, showing how powerful this stab was. Qin Feng's eyes were like lightning. He did not dodge and directly rushed over, but just as he was about to touch the tip of the spear, his spiritual power attached to the tip of the spear, causing it to tilt. The long sword in his hand pierced straight into Wolf Rider's chest. The speed was too fast. From the moment Qin Feng attacked to the moment the two Wolf Rider died, only a few breaths had passed. That series of sneak attacks dazzled everyone. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that two powerful Wolf Rider had died just like that. Actually, with Wolf Rider's strength, he shouldn't have ended up like this. It was mainly because of Qin Feng's sneak attack. One had to know that in a situation where the difference in strength wasn't too great, a sneak attack from a spirit master would be a devastating disaster for anyone. Qin Feng was already at the middle stage of the sea expansion realm, and there was not much difference in strength between him and the Wolf Rider. Furthermore, he had launched a surprise attack, so it would be difficult for him to not succeed. Moreover, the Green Wolf, Wolf Rider's biggest helper and a headache for everyone, was no obstacle in front of a spirit master. Qin Feng's spirit move. His spirit power turned into a spear and instantly pierced through the head of another green wolf. The two Wolf Rider were killed in an instant, causing the army to be in chaos. Under the attack of Ouyang Shi and the others, they were quickly defeated. Runaway slaves, where are you going? At this moment, some of the people besieging Fushimi chased after them, led by 3 Wolf Rider. You guys go first. Qin Feng blocked the back. His spirit power burst out, causing the 3 green wolves' huge body to stagger. No one dared to hesitate. They broke through the blockade, killed their way out, and soon disappeared into the forest. You all deserve to die. The 3 Wolf Rider took the lead and rushed over. 2 of them wanted to pass by Qin Feng and chase after the others. However, they didn't know that the one blocking them was not an ordinary person, but a spirit master. Spirit beasts approaching at such a close distance was simply courting death. Qin Feng's spirit power, which had already been brewing, turned into a spear and shot out. In an instant, the 3 green wolves' body were pierced through. The 3 fell from the green wolf. One of them was shocked and said, "You are a spirit master?" Qin Feng didn't answer. Instead, he rushed into the 3 people with a fierce posture. The wolf rider's strength lies in the tacit cooperation with the green wolf. Once they lose their mounts, they are no different from ordinary pioneer Sea Realm experts, except that they have more combat experience. However, this was useless in front of Qin Feng. In other words, anyone in front of a spirit master who is very good at using spirit power to attack is useless. Under Qin Feng's strange attack, one of the 3 wolf rider died and 2 were injured. Fushimi also noticed the situation here and quickly broke through. "It's you." When he saw Qin Feng, he was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. At first, he thought it was people from other super cities. He didn't expect it to be a group of people they looked down on. Qin Feng didn't bother to waste time greeting them. After repelling the 2 wolf rider, he quickly retreated. "Wait a minute, Qin Feng, are you going to watch us die?" Suddenly, a loud shout came from behind him. Qin Feng's footsteps paused. He recognized the voice of the woman who was unintentionally molested by him that day. However, he only paused for a moment before continuing to rush forward. "Qin Feng, if you can, please save my junior sister," Fushimi said loudly. "Senior brother, don't beg him. This kind of selfish person only knows how to take advantage of loopholes." "We'd rather die than beg him," the woman said. Qin Feng sighed and turned back, rushing into Fushimi's encirclement. His spiritual energy, water god technique, and physical strength burst out at the same time. On the spot, 2 late-stage sea expansion experts vomited blood and were sent flying. So strong. Fushimi's mouth was wide open in shock. Let alone him, even the woman's group was shocked. The person they looked down on that day was actually so strong. We all have the same mission, and we all want to find a way to enter the Saint Ryuin alive, so there's no such thing as selfishness. Everyone is seizing opportunities that are beneficial to them, so there's no such thing as taking advantage of loopholes. As for despicable people, I can't refute that. Everyone's standards are different. Qin Feng quickly rushed in front of the woman and pierced the green wolf's head with his spiritual energy spear. Then, he grabbed the wolf rider's spear and flung it away. He turned to the woman and said. The woman stared blankly at him, her rosy little mouth slightly open. She didn't hear what Qin Feng said. She only saw Qin Feng take care of the powerful wolf rider with a single move. "Don't be a love-struck fool," Qin Feng reminded her. Then, he killed the others and broke out of the encirclement at the same time. Suddenly, his heart twitched, and an inexplicable pain invaded his whole body. "Don't break out of the encirclement, run in another direction," Qin Feng shouted at Fushimi. At the same time, he pulled the woman and ran to the other side of the mountain. "Don't worry about him. As long as we break through this encirclement, we'll be safe." The people in the other city ignored him and continued to break out. "What are you doing?" The woman struggled and said, "The opportunity is right in front of us. If we don't get out, we won't have another chance." Qin Feng let go of her and said coldly, "If you think that's a way out, then do as you please." After saying that, he ran up the mountain without looking back. Fushimi and the others followed. They pulled the woman and said, "Let's leave quickly. Senior brother, I think he has some tricks up his sleeve to be able to bring those people here," the woman suddenly said. "But the exit is right in front of us," Fushimi said. "I choose to believe in him." The woman didn't hesitate and followed Qin Feng's back. Junior sister. Fushimi was furious. How could she be so willful at this juncture? "Fushimi, if you want to follow, we won't stop you. But we won't go with you," the other 3 people said and turned back, rushing towards the exit. Seeing this, Fushimi sighed and turned to chase after the woman. Qin Feng, you've harmed us. If we were together just now, we would have rushed out long ago, he shouted in exasperation. Qin Feng ignored him and increased his speed. His intuition told him that a great danger was looming over them. Boom! At this moment, a loud sound came from the direction of the valley entrance. A terrifying pressure swept out. Even though they were far away, they felt a wave of fear. That was definitely the arrival of a terrifying expert. Chapter 92. Predicament. Fushimi's expression stiffened. He was speechless for a long time. There was obviously a great expert at the blockade. If they were to break through there, it would be difficult for them to escape from the hands of that great expert. Now, he finally understood why Qin Feng gave up on the hope that was right in front of him. It wasn't hope, but despair. How did you accurately determine that there would be an expert rushing there? The woman asked, feeling a little scared. If they had not escaped with Qin Feng, they would have been dead by now. I just felt that something was wrong. I did not know that there would definitely be an expert. Qin Feng shrugged. He really did not know. It was just that he felt inexplicably irritable at that time, making him feel uneasy. His instincts told him to give up on breaking through the blockade and run away. And the result proved that he was right. If you want to leave now, I'm afraid it will be even more difficult. Fu Jian sighed. There will always be a way. Qin Feng had just spoken when his expression suddenly changed. At the same time, Fushimi and the woman also felt a strong aura quickly approaching. Hurry up and leave. Their expressions changed immediately. Wait! Qin Feng stopped the two. The person chasing them was a great expert. It would be difficult for them to escape. After all, no matter how much they tried to hide, some of their aura would leak out. And for such a great expert, as long as there was a little bit, they would be able to follow the trail. Qin Feng's eyes flickered for a moment. He suddenly looked at a river not far away. It was a mountain stream flowing to an unknown place. Go! Qin Feng led the two towards the river. He then jumped into the water and used the water god technique. The power of water in the river gathered and enveloped the three of them. Immediately after, his mental power spread out and carried the three of them away quickly. The power of water allowed them to hide their bodies in the water, while the mental power isolated them from all aura fluctuations. Moving in the water would not leave as many traces as moving on land. Soon, the aura that was chasing them disappeared. Qin Feng did not dare to stop. He followed the river for more than 10 miles before stopping. The three of them climbed ashore and quickly dived into the forest. Their spiritual energy was forcefully withdrawn into their bodies. Finally, they hid in a natural cave to recover their energy. More than an hour later, the three of them had recovered and gathered together to discuss what to do next. Now that this blockade has been exposed, they will definitely strengthen their defenses. We can't take this route anymore, Fushimi said. But we've already tried all the other routes. It's even more impossible for us to pass, Xiaoqi said. Then let's explore it again. I don't believe that there are only a few paths leading to St. Ryuin in such a large mountain range. They can't possibly seal off the entire Bald Tail mountain range. Running around like headless flies will only make us die faster. The two of them quarreled over whether to open up a new path or take the original route. Fushimi believed that the known routes had been sealed off by the Imperial Army. There was no chance of forcing their way in. Zhao Qi, on the other hand, felt that the Bald Tail mountain range was adjacent to the Nine Spirits mountain range. It was very dangerous. They should wait for an opportunity on the original route instead of rashly rushing into unknown areas. Qin Feng secretly shook his head at the argument between the two. To be honest, rationally he agreed with Zhao Qi's point of view. After all, the Bald Tail mountain range was not an ordinary mountain range. They even encountered 2 third-rank spirit beasts. It was difficult to guarantee that they would not encounter stronger spirit beasts. but from an emotional point of view, he supported Fushimi. He felt that the possibility of staying on the known route was not high. There might be a chance of survival if they went out to explore. There's no point in arguing like this. Take out the map and we'll study it carefully, Qin Feng said. Fushimi nodded. He took out an oilcloth from his arms and spread it out. It was covered with dense curved lines. Among them, 4 were more obvious. Some of the nearby dangerous areas were marked. We've tried all 4 routes. There's no chance, Fushimi said. Qin Feng nodded slightly. These 4 routes were quite obvious. If the Heavenly Sun City could detect them, it was impossible for the imperial capital not to know. If they were caught off guard, there might be a chance. But now it was impossible. What route is this? Suddenly, Qin Feng discovered that there was another route that was more obvious. The two's expressions changed. We can't take this route. Why? Qin Feng was puzzled. The two glanced at each other. Zhao Qi said helplessly, If we follow this route, where do you think we'll pass? Hearing this, Qin Feng advanced along the route. In the end, he gasped. This route indeed led to the Saint Ruin. Moreover, the location was extremely remote. Even if there were imperial troops, the defense should be relatively weak. But this route was a bit dangerous. There was a certain distance that required them to cross a part of the Nine-Spirit Mountain range. When we left, the city lord warned us not to take this route unless we're in a desperate situation, Fushimi said. Qin Feng stared at the area for a long time. In the end, he took a deep breath and said, We'll take this route. The two of them looked at him in silence. It's very difficult to leave this route. Staying here for a long time will only give them time to shrink the encirclement. At that time, we won't even have a chance to fight. Qin Feng said, This route may be very dangerous, but it's our last chance. No matter what, at least once we leave this area, the other places will be relatively safe. Zhao Qi and Fushimi thought for a long time. In the end, they gritted their teeth and nodded in agreement. Just as the two were about to move, Qin Feng suddenly asked, Do you know where the people from the other super cities are? You want to ally with them? Fushimi was astonished. Qin Feng shook his head. I only want to know if the people from the 10 super cities are of one mind. Hearing that, the two of them became silent. Seeing them like that, Qin Feng understood that his previous worries were right. Some of the people from the super cities had been recruited. On the surface, they were going to Saint Ruin, but in reality, they wanted to cooperate with the kingdom to capture all the escaped slaves. So when Ouyangxi mentioned that she wanted to meet up with the people from the super cities, he did not agree. In fact, he had already expected this. After all, the people from the super cities had a much higher status than them. The people from the kingdom were not idiot. They could recruit some of them. Do you know which cities are not on the same side as us? Qin Feng asked. Blood City. Fushimi clenched his fist tightly. His voice was filled with anger. If it weren't for them secretly informing us, we would have broken through the blockade with the people from Steel City. They were surrounded because the people from Blood City informed the kingdom's army in advance. If that's the case, most of the routes on your map are for circulation. That's troublesome. Qin Feng frowned. Chapter 93. Meeting a mental energy master for the first time, the people from Steel City had been destroyed, the people from Blood City were traitors, and the people from the other 7 cities were unknown whether they were friends or foes. This made the situation much more difficult for them. Right now, we can only take one step at a time, Qin Feng said. In a situation where they did not know whether they were friends or foes, there was no point in analyzing further. They could only test it out step by step. The three of them left in the dark and carefully walked along the 5th route. Sure enough, they discovered that there were many hidden sentries that were extremely well hidden. If not for Qin Feng's increasingly adept use of mental energy, he would not have discovered them. This route is also blocked. Fushimi and Zhao Qi's expressions were very ugly. Without knowing the news from the other cities, and knowing that the known routes were already controlled by the people from the capital, Qin Feng did not know what to do for a moment. Looks like we can only use one last method, Qin Feng faintly said. What method? Zhao Qi and Fushimi asked at the same time. Charge blindly. The leaves of the dense and quiet forest suddenly trembled slightly. A couple of human figures flashed and rushed out from the tree branches. Immediately, their bodies pressed on the tree branches like agile monkeys. Their bodies once again charged forward. With a couple of leaps, they swiftly disappeared at the end of the tree branches. Stop! As the human figures flashed, the leading figure suddenly straightened his palm. Soon after, the two figures behind him nimbly landed on the tree branches and cast a puzzled gaze towards the young man in front. What is it? Zhao Qi's gaze swept around, but did not discover any movement, and could not help but ask in a low voice with some doubt. Someone is coming, let's hide first. Qin Feng's gaze stared intently at the left side. His outstanding mental energy gave him an outstanding ability to survive in the forest. He was able to detect movements that others could not. This point allowed him to have an additional method of survival compared to others in the unknown Bald Tail mountain range. After hearing Qin Feng's words, the two of them might have some doubts, but they did not ask any further. They flashed and swiftly fled into the dense forest below. Around 3 minutes after Qin Feng's group had hidden themselves, a slight rushing wind sound was suddenly transmitted from the dense forest not far away. Immediately, 5 figures gradually appeared. Finally, they stopped at a spot not far from where Qin Feng's group was hiding. Their sharp eyes slowly swept over this quiet forest. Looking through the gaps in the forest, Qin Feng's group of 3 stared at the 5 warriors not far away. From the aura that seeped out of their bodies, they were obviously at the late stage of the sea-opening realm. How could there be nothing? Could it be that you're mistaken? Suddenly, a faint voice rang out. The 3 of them were stunned. They carefully raised their heads, and when they saw the middle-aged man floating in the air before them, their expressions changed. Bone-strengthening expert. Zhao Qi and Fushimi could not help but whisper. No. Qin Feng stared at the man. In his perception, this man's spiritual power was only at the middle stage of the sea-opening realm, but his spiritual power was extremely strong. There was no doubt that this man was a spiritual power master, and his rank was definitely higher than his. Because Qin Feng asked himself, he was unable to use his spiritual power to suspend himself in the air. Primary Upper Spiritual Power Master. Qin Feng said in his heart. Primary spiritual power masters were divided into lower and upper levels, respectively corresponding to the sea-opening realm and the bone-strengthening realm. Only primary upper spiritual power masters had the ability to use their spiritual power to fly for a short period of time. He was currently in the lower level, so he could not fly. Qin Feng hurriedly shifted his gaze and reminded them not to stare for a long time. As a spiritual power master, he understood that spiritual power masters' perception was exceptionally keen, and they could perceive things that others could not. Even if they did not reveal anything, just staring for a long time could be sensed by a spiritual power master. Qin Feng's eyes gradually became dignified. This was the first time he had met someone of the same profession. The middle-aged man sensed for a while, and finally shook his head, saying, "There is no one here, let's go somewhere else." After these people left, Zhao Qi's body moved slightly, wanting to stand up. However, Qin Feng's face changed slightly, whispering, "Don't move! Didn't they all leave?" Zhao Qi was puzzled, but although her mouth said so, her body did not dare to move too much. Qin Feng did not pay attention to her, and just looked at the place where the spiritual power master had disappeared. Seeing his action, the two were startled, and could only continue to follow his gaze. A quiet atmosphere shrouded the forest. A couple of minutes later, the tree branches that Qin Feng's group was looking at suddenly shook. Immediately, two human figures flashed out. From the looks of their faces, they were surprisingly the mental energy masters who should have left earlier. As for the other person, he was a stranger to Qin Feng and the others, but their hearts trembled. This person was a genuine bone-strengthening expert. There is indeed no one. Brother Zhong, did you sense wrongly? On the branches, the bone-strengthening realm master saw that there was still not the slightest movement in the surroundings, shook his head, and turned to the spiritual power master. The middle-aged man helplessly nodded and said hesitantly, "I did feel that there was an unusual fluctuation here. Now it seems that it should be a small spiritual beast. Let's go." As expected of a spiritual power master. Looking at the two people who had disappeared into the distance, Qin Feng slowly stood up from the forest and sighed. If he was not a spiritual power master, and knew the terror of spiritual detection, he would have fallen into their trap. Zhao Qi and Fushimi also separated from the forest, and each stood up. Their gazes shifted from the place where the two people had left to Qin Feng, and more or less, there was a trace of conviction in their eyes. Not to mention that Qin Feng had led them to avoid many dangers in advance. Just this move alone was enough to convince them. Two bone-strengthening realm masters were tricked by you. You are really amazing. Fushimi gave Qin Feng a thumbs up. The other one is not a bone-strengthening realm master, but a primary upper-level spiritual power master. Qin Feng said with a wry smile. In this invisible confrontation, it seemed that he had a slight advantage, but in fact, he did not win. It was just that he had a slight advantage in the dark. Upper-level spiritual power master? The two people were shocked. I don't know how many spiritual power masters there are here. The road ahead is not going to be easy. Qin Feng sighed. Spiritual power masters were particularly sensitive to spiritual power. It was difficult for others to perceive it, but they could easily perceive other people's spiritual power. So now Qin Feng did not dare to casually use his spiritual power. If he accidentally probed into the area covered by other spiritual power masters, then it would be troublesome. Meeting a fellow spiritual power master made Qin Feng even more careful. He did not dare to rashly use his spiritual power, and did not dare to carelessly rush around. Rushing around like this is not the way. Maybe we should change our strategy. Qin Feng whispered. What do you mean? The two people looked at him puzzledly. Chapter 94. A futile effort. Zhao Qi and Fushimi stared blankly at Qin Feng, not knowing what to do. They had only dared to attack Qin Feng because they thought he was a temporary army. Moreover, they were far away from the Bald Tail mountain range, and there were no stronger experts. Here, the Empire's soldiers were everywhere, and none of them were simple. Others would be running for their lives, so who would dare to attack an army? To them, Qin Feng's decision was simply courting death. This won't work at all. It doesn't matter if we encounter a relatively weak force. Even if we do, we won't be able to kill them silently. If they send out a signal, we will be completely exposed. Fushimi shook his head. Indeed, no matter what, these are all experienced soldiers. They won't be easy to deal with. Zhao Qi agreed. Hearing this, Qin Feng was startled. His palm slowly rubbed his chin. After a long while, he muttered, Let's walk for a while and take a look. If there's an opportunity to attack, perhaps we can choose a group with weaker strength. With the strength of the three of us, as long as we're careful, we should be able to quietly take down a group in a surprise attack. That's too risky. Even you said it's only a possibility, not a certainty. Fushimi shook his head, disagreeing with Qin Feng's decision. Now, every decision we make must be correct. If there's even the slightest mistake, we're all finished. Indeed, but we don't have any information and we don't even know where we are. It is very possible that we have already fallen into their encirclement. It is just that we haven't discovered it yet. Therefore, we urgently need the military to set up defenses here so that we can make corresponding countermeasures. Otherwise, no matter how much effort we put in, it will all be empty talk. As long as the benefits outweigh the risks, we should give it a try, Qin Feng said. The two were speechless. If they failed, they would die. What benefits could be greater than this risk? Seeing that the two were silent, Qin Feng smiled and said, "Think about it. If we know the location and layout of the defenses here, it's equivalent to having a complete and risk-free passage to St. Ryuin." Hearing this, Zhao Qi and Fushimi's eyes flickered. They were slightly tempted. After pondering for a while, the two nodded heavily. "We can try first." Although this was a little crazy, it was undeniably the fastest and most effective way. "Isn't it just death?" Fushimi gritted his teeth. Seeing him like that, Qin Feng editor. Transin Yuxing. After deciding their next strategy, Qin Feng and the others began to focus their attention on the patrols. In the past 2 hours, they had encountered a few patrols, and in the end, they couldn't do it. Either they were too close or their strength was too weak. They couldn't kill them in one go. Within the dense thicket, Qin Feng and the rest looked at the few people passing by below. All of them helplessly shook their heads. The strength of this group of people was relatively weak. However, they were able to sense that there was another group less than 100 meters away from them. The battle ripples here would definitely be transmitted over. Hence, for safety's sake, they could only continue to give up on attacking this time around. Qin Feng gestured to the two people behind him. Thus, the spiritual power in their bodies that had begun to surge had to turn silent again. Qin Feng was about to get up and leave with the others, but his footsteps paused. He looked down at the team in the distance, and a light flashed in his mind. He secretly whispered a few words to the two, and then left alone. Zhao Qi and Fushimi looked at each other and smiled bitterly at the same time. It's really crazy. The two didn't dare to hesitate and rushed into the distance. "Head, there are bloodstains and some rags here. They should be left behind by the escaped slave." A soldier found traces at the roots of the trees and hurriedly shouted. Several people came over and the leading soldier laughed. "Everyone, it seems that it's time for us to make a contribution. Head, let's hurry up and chase." Several people followed the bloodstains all the way down and gradually deviated from their original search track. After tracking for more than 10 minutes, several people's eyes lit up. Under a big tree not far away, a man and a woman were lying. The woman was seriously injured and unconscious, and the man was covered in blood and his breath was weak. "Brothers, catch them alive." The leading soldier laughed and walked over. "So far, not a single escaped slave has been caught alive. Brothers, our chance to be promoted and make a fortune has come." The man's face showed panic, and then he immediately became fierce and shouted angrily, "I'll fight with you. With your strength, how can you fight?" A soldier kicked the man and laughed, "With such strength, you dare to be an escaped slave. Catch them for me. Be careful, don't let them commit suicide," the leading soldier ordered. The other 4 hurriedly walked over and lifted the man and woman. "Head, they're injured like this. Even if they want to commit suicide, they can't do it. It seems that the heavens have pity on us. We caught 2 escaped slaves so easily." Several soldiers were beaming with joy. Even the leading soldier couldn't help but laugh and relax. "Brothers, let's go back and get the reward. Let's get promoted and make a fortune together. I didn't expect that the first to catch an escaped slave alive would be us." The leading soldier waved his hand and said, "Pucci." But before his hand fell, the head was thrown high up. At the same time, the weak man and woman suddenly burst out and attacked like lightning, killing 1 person each. Swish! A spiritual spear suddenly attacked and pierced through the chest of a person. "If you don't want to end up like them, put down the thing in your hand." The last soldier was about to release a signal flare when a cold voice suddenly sounded. Then, spiritual spears appeared around him and aimed at his vital point. The soldier immediately broke out in cold sweat. He trembled and said, "If I listen to you, can you let me go?" "That depends on what kind of information you can provide," Qin Feng said indifferently. "Okay, I'll tell you everything," the soldier hurriedly said. But in the next moment, his face suddenly became ferocious. A fierce spiritual power spread out from his body and directly shattered the spiritual spears around him. "Go to hell!" he shouted and was about to throw the signal flare. "Poochie!" But just as he raised his hand, a sharp weapon slashed and his entire arm was cut off. Qin Feng rushed over and punched him in the head. He controlled his strength very well and didn't break his head. Instead, he made him dizzy. Taking advantage of this gap, Qin Feng's mental strength rushed into his mind with a whoosh, probing his memories. After a while, Qin Feng's face became slightly ugly. His spiritual power suddenly stirred and destroyed the soldier's spiritual power. "Damn, this guy's level is too low. He doesn't know much. We worked for nothing." Qin Feng couldn't help but curse. Zhao Qi and Fushimi heard this and sighed helplessly. "Get rid of the body and get ready for the next wave." The two were shocked and said, "You still want to do it?" Chapter 95. Simple and brutal. After half a day of planning, they didn't get much useful information. This made Qin Feng so angry that he cursed. This aroused his stubborn temper, and he was determined to do something big. Fushimi and Zhao Qi were speechless. How could they fight over such a thing? But since they had already done it, they couldn't just go back empty-handed. The three of them dealt with the corpse and continued to look for target. This time, they targeted some of the more powerful Kiliarchs. The army of the imperial capital was roughly divided into several ranks: ordinary soldiers, Kiliarchs, ministers, and generals. Ordinary soldiers generally just carried out orders and rarely had any useful information. So Qin Feng and the others could only target the Kiliarchs who were qualified to give out missions. This undoubtedly increased the difficulty. Kiliarchs were not ordinary soldiers. Not only were their positions high, but their combat strength and combat experience far exceeded ordinary people. If they wanted to make a move on these people, the risk of being exposed would greatly increase. To make a move on these people, they had to think carefully. But once Qin Feng's stubbornness flared up, no matter how strong they were, they couldn't pull him back. The three of them quickly shuttled through the forest, probing the soldiers' memories. It wasn't that they didn't have any clues. At least they knew the distribution of the patrol teams in a small area, as well as the location of a Kiliarch. "There are 6 patrol teams here. We'll use the method just now to lure these teams away, then come back and make a move on that Kiliarch." Qin Feng told the two of them the information he had obtained. "I can't imagine that one day I would be so crazy." Fushimi couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Maybe one day this will be something you can brag about to others," Qin Feng said. "I'd rather not have this kind of capital." After discussing for a while, the three of them split up and each led 2 teams away. Then they returned and gathered in one place. This was a high slope with a wide field of vision. There were several tents in the field, and there were some soldiers standing guard around. 13 soldiers, 3 of whom are in the late stage of the Pioneer Sea realm. After using his mental power to investigate for a moment, Qin Feng informed him of the situation. "It won't be easy. And even if we eat them, we'll inevitably expose ourselves," Fushimi said. "They could certainly defeat these people, but it would take a lot of time. That way they would be exposed. As I said, when the benefits outweigh the risk is worth taking," Qin Feng said in an unquestionable tone. "As long as we can obtain the 1,000-man commander's memories, this entire region will be under our control." The two of them looked at each other speechlessly. "Since you've already said so, what else can they say?" You guys take the lead. Don't worry about anything else. Just attack the Chiliarch in the middle tent. Attack directly? Don't you need some planning? Fushimi wondered if Qin Feng's brain had gone haywire. He had spent so much effort to send those people away, and now he was going to kill them directly? Moreover, why should they be the vanguard? What's there to plan? Our goal is to become a Chiliarch, Qin Feng said. Trust me, it's not wrong. The two of them were speechless. What was going on? It was too simple and crude, but since they had already come this far, they could only listen to him. The two of them immediately charged towards the Chiliarch's camp. Who are you? Escaped slaves? Nearly 10 soldiers surrounded them. When they saw the attackers, they were all stunned. Which escaped slaves didn't hide far away when they saw them. These two actually came directly to their camp. They couldn't believe it. Kill them for me. A group of soldiers charged forward, but Fushimi and Zhao Qi were both geniuses of the Heavenly Sun realm. They were obviously stronger, and the soldiers quickly couldn't defend themselves and retreated. What's going on? The leader was in disbelief. Escaped slaves taking the initiative to attack was something that had never happened before. Seeing that the two escaped slaves were powerful, the leader didn't dare to be careless and hurriedly sent out a signal flare. What's going on? The Chiliarch walked out of the tent and questioned. Sir, it's the escaped slaves. The leader's tone was a little uncertain. These two escaped slaves seemed to have lost their minds. They actually took the initiative to attack. I don't know if they're playing some trick. Who cares what trick they're playing? If we can't capture them alive, kill them, the Chiliarch ordered. The remaining soldiers also rushed forward and besieged Fushimi and Zhao Qi. That's strange. The Chiliarch's gaze deepened. It was strange that the escaped slaves took the initiative to attack. Seeing that the 13 soldiers couldn't capture the two escaped slaves and were even injured by them, the Chiliarch roared angrily and was about to attack personally. But at that moment, a pair of hands suddenly came from both sides and slapped the Chiliarch's face. A crisp sound rang out, and the Chiliarch felt a burning pain on his face. The huge impact caused him to temporarily lose control of his mind. When he regained his senses, he was just about to counterattack when he realized that his body could not move. He lowered his head to look, and his pupils shrank. He did not know when, but numerous water snakes as thick as an arm had coiled around his body and wrapped around him. Qin Feng appeared behind the Chiliarch without anyone noticing. His hands tightly clasped the Chiliarch's left and right face, and his mental power surged out to suppress the Chiliarch. He then used the 100 Calamity devouring technique to the extreme to devour the Chiliarch's spiritual energy. Sensing the loss of his spiritual energy, the Chiliarch's expression changed drastically. He fought back crazily, and his spiritual energy surged out and almost sent Qin Feng flying. Qin Feng gritted his teeth and used his mental power and water energy to suppress the Chiliarch's counterattack. He had already exposed himself. He could only succeed and he couldn't fail. In the stalemate, Qin Feng almost couldn't hold on for a few times, but he managed to hold on. The Chiliarch's strength was stronger than he imagined. He estimated that the Chiliarch was about to enter the bone-strengthening realm. After several unsuccessful counterattacks, the Chiliarch's counterattack became weaker and weaker. During the process, Qin Feng's devouring power didn't stop, and the Chiliarch's counterattack became stronger and weaker. After several unsuccessful attempts, it would be harder for him to counterattack. Sensing the Chiliarch's weakness, Qin Feng became more confident and accelerated his devouring of the Chiliarch's spiritual energy. Gradually, the Chiliarch's struggle became weaker and weaker. When there was only a little spiritual energy left in his body, Qin Feng's mental power rushed into his mind. After learning all the memories, he desperately stirred them up. Then, he devoured the last trace of spiritual energy and kicked the Chiliarch's body into the battle circle. he shouted to the two, "Let's go." The two repelled their opponents and followed Qin Feng's footstep. They quickly shuttled through the forest and quickly shook off the soldiers. "Oh no, the other soldiers are gathering here." Sensing a large number of soldiers surrounding them, Fushimi and Zhao Qi panicked. It must be the signal flare that attracted people from other areas. "Follow me." Qin Feng pulled the two into a ditch. The power of water wrapped around the three of them, and his mental power spread out, isolating them from the outside world. A few minutes later, a group of more than 10 people and 3 wolf rider passed by. After a while, Qin Feng and the other two emerged and ran east. "Qin Feng, where are we going now?" "Xiangshan. I hope we can still make it," Qin Feng said. "What's going on?" Listening to Qin Feng's tone, it seemed that something big had happened. Chapter 96. Chapter 96. Two roads. The people of Dragon Transformation City were in danger. The two of them were startled. Qin Feng had been with them all this time. How could he know about this? However, they soon understood. He must have checked the memories of the Chiliarch. He must have some information about the people of Dragon Transformation City. "What's the situation now?" the two asked. Dragon Transformation City and Heavenly Sun City had always been on good terms. Moreover, they even suspected that there might be acquaintances among the escaped slaves from Dragon Transformation City. If that was the case, they would go to the rescue no matter what. Imperial Sea City's people are going to enter the Imperial Capital's ambush zone with them. Looking around, Qin Feng said softly, "If this Kiliarka's rank isn't too low, they will fall into the Imperial Capital's ambush in 2 hours. The people from Emperor Sea City are here as well?" The two of them were shocked, and then their expressions became even more solemn. Although there were many escaped slaves in the primitive land with the same mission as them, in their subconscious, they unanimously believed that only the people from the 10 super cities were the ones they could place their hopes on. Blood City betrayed them, Steel City was annihilated, and Heavenly Sun City lost 3 men. Now, even Imperial Sea City and Dragon Transformation City were about to be annihilated. If the Imperial Capital's plan succeeded, half of the top 10 cities would be destroyed. This did not include whether there were any traitors in the remaining 5 cities. "We must save them," Fushimi said solemnly. "If the people of the 2 major cities were to die here, the loss would be too great." Qin Feng didn't think too much about it. Saving people was secondary. He was more concerned about the ambush. From the 1,000-man commander's memories, he knew that it was indeed a path that led to St. Ryuin. However, at the final checkpoint, there were many soldiers from the Imperial Capital lying in ambush. There were also many mercenaries and assassins from the Imperial Capital. They had to save the people of Dragon Transformation City, but how could they get through that ambush? As he hurried along, Qin Feng thought of a plan. Soon, he came up with a plan. Mount Xiang wasn't very far from here. Through the Kiliarka's memories, Qin Feng had a rough understanding of the military deployment in some areas. They had arrived half an hour earlier. There is an exit 30 miles away from here in the west. The people from the merchant city are waiting for us there, Qin Feng said. The two of them looked at him in surprise. Zhao Qi said, "Isn't that where we came from just now?" "Don't worry about it. Just remember this information. Tell them not to say anything else." Qin Feng waved his hand and paused for a moment. He stared at the two and said, "Remember, don't say anything else. Don't ask any more. This is the best way to save them." The two nodded and slowly walked out of the forest. On the plains not far away they saw 7 or 8 people. "Meow meow." Zhao Qi's face lit up as he hurried over. "Fushimi, introduce me to the people of Dragon Transformation City," Qin Feng whispered. Although he felt that Qin Feng was a little strange, Fushimi still patiently introduced. "The woman in white is called Fan Meow Meow. She is a good friend of mine and my junior sister." The other two men are called Zhang Hua and Chang Ting. They have interacted with us before. Fushimi pointed to the other four and said, "They are from Emperor Sea City." Qin Feng nodded and glanced at the four people. They were all in the late stage of the Pioneer Sea realm and were very powerful. Those who could be chosen as runaway slaves were definitely outstanding people in their own places. They were geniuses among geniuses. Any one of them was much stronger than ordinary late-stage Pioneer Sea realm cultivators. Hearing the voice, Fan Miao Miao turned her head in confusion. When she saw Zhao Qi, a happy smile appeared on her face. She quickly went over and said, "Little Qi, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm so happy." "Miss Fan, long time no see." Fushimi walked over with a smile. "Oh, Fu Dandan, you're here too." Fan Miao Miao smiled. Fushimi's face reddened as he thought of some ridiculous things from before. He coughed awkwardly and looked at the other two. He cupped his hands and said, "Brother Zhang, Brother Chang." Zhang Hua and Chang Ting nodded. At this moment, the people from Emperor Sea City walked over and one of them asked, "Brother Zhang, who are these people?" "Oh, I almost forgot to introduce them, Brother Li." Zhang Hua pointed to Fushimi and Zhao Qi and said, "These two are from the Heavenly Sun City." Heavenly Sun City? Li Yaoqian's eyes flashed and he smiled. "Friends from the Heavenly Sun City, nice to meet you." "It's fate to meet you here." Fushimi cupped his hands and smiled. "With the addition of the Heavenly Sun City's people, our chances of winning have increased by a little." Li Yaotian laughed. "Brother Li, we have good news this time." Fushimi shook his head and smiled. "Fu Daring, we have even better news." Fan Miao Miao smiled and said to Zhao Qi, "We found an exit with only a few people from the imperial capital guarding it. As long as we catch them by surprise, we will be able to break out." "That's right. There's a passage to St. Ryuin less than 10 miles ahead of us, at the entrance of the valley. As long as we pass through there, the people from the imperial capital won't be able to do anything to us," Li Yaotian said. "Is that passage safe? Have you checked it?" Qin Feng walked over with a faint smile on his face. At this moment, everyone turned their attention to Qin Feng. Fan Miao Miao asked, "Little Qi, who is he?" "Merchant City." Zhao Qi was about to answer when Qin Feng laughed and said, "Our merchant city has found a passage 30 miles to the west. We have checked it many times and found that there's only one wolf rider and 15 soldiers guarding it. Everyone, this is a good opportunity. Why don't we join forces and break through together?" Hearing this, they were stunned. They didn't expect that they would also find a safe exit. "The people from Merchant City are really amazing. I admire you." Li Yaotian smiled, then shook his head and said, "But compared to them, our route is safer and closer." Qin Feng shook his head and said indifferently, "It's not that we don't trust you, but we trust ourselves more. That route is absolutely safe. We won't take any other route. If you don't want to, we won't force you. Let's go. My people are still waiting for us there." After saying that, Qin Feng was about to leave with the other two. "Miao Miao, trust me. That route is safer." Zhao Qi pulled Fan Miao Miao's hand slightly harder. "Little Qi, this route is also safe," Fan Miao Miao said. At this moment, Zhang Hua and Chang Ting also came over. Zhang Hua said, "Brother Fu, we shouldn't split our forces. If there are two routes, we should choose the one that's closer." "Brother Zhang is right. If we break through on both sides, there will be a risk of failure. It's better to join forces," Li Yaotian said appropriately. The people from the two cities were unwilling to leave. Fushimi and Zhao Qi were in a dilemma. They looked at Qin Feng and thought, "Why do we have to waste so much effort to deceive them? Can't we just say that there's danger ahead?" Little Qi, actually. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.